back to Stockton. Short-handed breakaway by Dave Pullen. He's going right on in. Shoot! Go!
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey. Hey everybody, it is Isaiah. After 3 weeks, we are back. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 126. And while the great Dan Silver has the night off, we are here with Chef B. How are you, man?
Very good, thank you.
Listen, we got quite a show for you. We are going to go around the league with the guest who runs probably what I consider the best aggregating site for the NHL and hockey in general. And of course, you know him from SpectorsHockey.net. He also writes for Bleacher Report and also Hockey News and many other outlets. And so we're going to welcome back right here Lyle Richardson. Lyle, how are you, man?
I'm just fine. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So we're going to sweep through the league. We're going to take a look at what the teams did. In some cases, it'll be just a capsule summary. In other places, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And, of course, the big finale is Lyle's opinion about what the Flyers have done and, come a little bit deeper analysis from there. But, gents, what we're going to do, let's all kind of engage with what the Seattle Kraken did as they kind of edge out Arizona into the, I guess they're in the Central Division and now they are in the Pacific Division. And Lyle, when you take a look at the Kraken and Ron Francis and with his head coach Dave Haxtell, they went at this differently than the Vegas Golden Knights. And it looks like, hey, we're going to build from the net out, build a good defense. They have Phil Grubauer and a really promising backup, and Chris Streeter had a nice year in Florida. What's your overall impression?
Well, overall, for the offseason, I think they did all right. Obviously, they didn't follow exactly the same template as the Vegas Golden Knights did 4 years previously, but I think some of the rival general managers there kind of learned their lesson about the danger of side deals. So the Kraken weren't able to swing as many. They didn't swing any real side deals at all compared to what the Golden Knights did. The expansion draft I found was a bit of a dud, to be fair. We were all expecting big moves, some big names maybe to go. I mean, Carey Price was mentioned and Vladimir Tarasenko was linked to them. And instead, the biggest name really was Mark Giordano. I mean, no offense to Mark Giordano, but he's no Carey Price, or he doesn't have the pizzazz of a Carey Price or a Tarasenko. But they did all right defensively. They got some big defensemen, guys that are going to, in good shutdown roles. I like what they did with their blue line. But I did have some questions about their goaltending and their forward depth until free agency, and that's when they really, like, I think they knocked it out of the park during free agency, because you look at the guys they got. You mentioned Grubauer. I mean, the guy's coming off. He was a Vezina finalist last season. He was definitely one of the best goalies in the league last season. They get a really good two-way winger in Jaden Schwartz. They get themselves a very decent, center in Alex Wenberg, a guy who can be your sort of like your middle third. And overall, I thought that they didn't do too bad of a job. It's a decent lineup they've got. This isn't a lineup that I see repeating the Golden Knights' quest to reach the Stanley Cup final in the first year, but they'll be difficult to play against. They'll be competitive, and they've got a good foundation. I think they're going forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, they still have the ability to strike with assets and cap space. And that's it. I mean, that's the deal right now, is to be able to do something like that. So if they do get into position, they want to improve their situation, they have that ability. They're going to have about $9 million to play with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just a case of, as you point out, it's not just a case of having a solid lineup for opening night. It's also, to have the assets available to be able to perhaps improve yourself if you're in a position to perhaps secure a playoff spot. So, I mean, they're obviously they're not going to be trading like a lot of draft picks or anything like that. They've got a farm system to build right now, so they don't have a lot of assets that way. But, as you pointed out, they do have cap space. They do have some affordable NHL players. And if you get to a point where you're looking at maybe bringing in a rental player from a team that's not going to make the playoffs, they're well positioned to do that with their cap space.
Absolutely. Chef?
Yeah, I was going to say, we had a lot of experience here in Philly with Hackstall as a coach. Mm-hmm. And this is a Hackstall team. It looks like it's a lot of big guys with big bodies, agent, veterans nonetheless. I mean, I'm not going to call them agent. There are some pretty good guys on the blue line there. They are getting up there, and we all know how Hack loves his veterans. But I think they're going to be, if nothing else, going to be a lot of a really annoying team to play against. And I think they can wear down a team if you're not paying attention. I think it'll be quite fun to watch some of these games.
Yeah, definitely. Chef, why don't you take the rest of the Pacific teams, starting with Calgary, and we'll get some feedback from Lyle about that.
Okay. Let's see. Start with Calgary. Oh, you got to bear with me here because my notes are like I'm like a conspiracy theory with all the Post-it notes all over this table. I got here going with me. So, I mean, with Calgary, I was hoping to see a lot more movement from them. I mean, they kind of like in the rankings for them out there. They didn't seem to be too high or too low. They were like square, almost towards the lower part of the end of the middle there. I expected them to do a lot more. They kind of really disappointed me, if anything else. I mean, I thought there was a chance there for, there could be a deal to Philly for the Flyers, because you heard a lot of people talking about how they wanted Johnny Gaudreau to come home. But, I mean, they got Tyler Picklick. I like him. He's really good. He's a good working guy, and Blake Coleman and Andy Walensky, and they got some good guys. They lost a couple, but to me, they kind of like just stayed even or a little below even. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on the fact that I was expecting bigger change from the Flames. But I mean, GM Brad Treleving talked about that in his season-ending press conference. Things have to change. We can't stay the same way that we have. But by and large, there's not any real sweeping change there with that roster. There was plenty of speculation. Oh, maybe they'll trade Johnny Gaudreau. Maybe they'll trade Sean Monahan. The only real move of significance was they left Mark Giordano exposed in the expansion draft. And they brought in Blake Coleman, who, let's face it, Blake Coleman is a Daryl Sutter type of guy. So, Nikita Zadorov, big body guy. He's physical, but he's also prone to making some mistakes on the D there as well. overall, this isn't a team, though, that really has done very much to improve itself, to be blunt. I don't think they're going to be trading Johnny Gaudreau this summer. People were maybe expecting that was going to happen, but I think the game plan here is to still try to re-sign him, but I also think when you get to this stage in the offseason, I think it's going to be, well, if a new contract hasn't been announced by now, then they're probably in the let's play this season out and see how both sides do. In other words, if the Flames are going to miss the playoffs by the trade deadline and Gaudreau hasn't put pen to paper by that point, yeah, we can start talking seriously about him being a trade chip.
I guess move on to Vegas here. And my thing of Vegas is they lost Fleury, and my whole focus on them is, even if they did ended up like being on a little bit on the short end of some of their signings or whatever, and losing, what they lose, Ryan Reeves too, right? So I mean, but my biggest concern is Robin Leonard going to be an everyday guy. I don't know if he can be. I think he gets in his own head too much. Otherwise, they're kind of like pretty solid on the forwards. I mean, and their D is, I mean, it's doable. So I think the goaltending is going to be the biggest question mark for them.
I'm not too worried about the goaltending, though. Robin Lehner proved himself an everyday goaltender, proved himself as an everyday reliable starter back with the Islanders, for heaven's sake. It's not his fault that he bounced around a bit. But I don't have any worries about Lehner in goal. My worry for them is down the middle at center. Their depth at center is just, there's no improvement there. I mean, and it was their depth at center that was a big part of their undoing against the Montreal Canadiens in the semifinal. The Canadiens really exposed that weakness. And, they brought in Nolan Patrick, a name familiar to Flyers fans. But, I mean, you guys know Nolan Patrick, have probably seen and get a good at least a general idea of where he's at right now. Maybe the change will do him some good, but I don't see him at this stage right now taking over as the first line or even the second line center. And that's what they need. And that's why I continue to link them to the Buffalo Sabres and Jack Eichel. I think if there's any way to try and swing a deal to make the dollars fit, they'd be very keen to do that. But they're going to want to see if Eichel's healthy first before they want to pull the trigger there. So I'm not taking them out of the Jack Eichel sweepstakes at all. They've got work to do there. Everywhere else in their lineup, honestly, I'm not worried about them. I'm not worried about them in net. Definitely not worried about them on the blue line. Their wingers are fantastic, but it's that depth down the middle that's going to be their undoing unless they address it this year.
So I guess that would bring us to the Ducks. The Ducks are a team I always like to root for, but then I sit there and I go, it's hard to root for them because I guess I'm still living off of the Ducks from years ago that had Solani, and it was a really fun and speedy team. I don't see that much more. I don't see. It's a hard team to watch, and it's a hard team to root for anymore. Do you disagree there?
Oh, no, I agree. Listen, I don't disagree at all with that. It's very obvious they're in the middle of a rebuild right now. They've been linked to Jack Eichel, and quite honestly, I think that they're among the teams that have been linked to them. I think they would have perhaps the best chance of getting him because they've got the cap space and they've got the tradable assets. But I think Bob Murray, right now, the focus is on building up with youth, and they've got some promising young guys there. Let's be honest. Trevor Zegras, they've got Jamie Drysdale, the defenseman, they've got. But I think this is going to be a very, very interesting season in terms of with their goalie with Gibson, because how much longer is he going to want to be part of a rebuild? I mean, at some point he may want to get out of there. So I'd keep an eye on John Gibson's situation. Some of their defense, I mean, Josh Manson was part of trade rumors last season. Hampus Lindholm was also mentioned. Ricard Raquel was mentioned. We could see maybe one or two of those veterans get shipped out this year because this is not a team that's making the playoffs. Let's be absolutely clear. Anybody who had any remaining fantasies about the Ducks making the playoffs, I think they got crushed last year. That's absolutely not going to happen. They're going to rebuild with youth. Maybe they take a plunge with Eichel if he comes back healthy and they feel that, yeah, this is a guy that we can build around going forward. Because I think, honestly, Jack Eichel, I think, would be happy going to a team like Anaheim, to tell you the truth. But that's a topic for another day. Yeah, the Ducks are not a playoff contender this year, even if they do get Jack Eichel this year.
Yeah, I was going to say
Kurt.
lots of changes in Vancouver.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for Vancouver, I mean, I like Demko. He showed a lot before, and actually, they kind of. I think Halak. I mean, he's good. He's going to be a decent backup. But my concern, I guess, for this team is they had a lot of shakeup. They're going to be fun to watch. But with this schedule, I think they're in a situation where the Flyers are in, with Demko being a little bit unproven. And is he going to be able to bear a load to take a brunt if they kind of flounder a little bit with Demko?
Well, I think they're going to be all right with him. Yet last season let's face it, it was a weird season for a lot of teams. It was a weird season for your Flyers. It was, and the Canucks were in that boat too. Remember they had a COVID outbreak as well, probably the worst COVID outbreak of all the teams that had it. It was just kind of, I mean, some teams had some difficulty really adjusting to that shortened schedule last season. I really want to see what this team can do over a full 82-game schedule. They've got a lot of good young talent there. My concern still remains their defense. They were among the worst defensive teams in the league last season. They had that problem the year before, but they also had Jacob Markstrom to bail them out in between the pipes back then. I like the addition of Connor Garland from Arizona. Taking Oliver Ekman-Larsson on that one, that's going to go one of two ways. That's either going to work out really well, and it will totally justify picking up, 2/3 of his salary, or I guess 3/4 of his salary, or it's going to go south. He's not going to get any better, and they're going to be on the hook with another high-paid player on their books for a long time. But Connor Garland was a good pickup, though. I like that. So, as you said, they're going to be fun to watch. They're going to be an interesting team to watch. Whether they make the playoffs, let's see how things play out over 82 games.
Yeah, I would say it would be on the cusp, but I guess onwards to the San Jose Sharks. I think they got a decent amount better, but I don't know if it's enough. I mean, Jones needed to go. He needed to change the scenery, and we'll talk about him more, I guess, when we get to the Flyers at the end.
We'll be forced to.
Yeah, we'll be forced to, but it could be a thing. Their defense is old. It's obviously has some questions with age and contract and all that. Brett Burns can only be Brett Burns for so long, and the Pickle Man is getting up there as well too. But I think the big story here is going to be they need to really end this Evander Kane fiasco. I mean. Whatever happens, it needs to happen before training camp starts. I think it's fair to the team because I know everything I've read. They're kind of fed up with all this, what's happening and what's going on. They just want to answer either way or whatever's going on. I don't think he stays with San Jose. I don't know. I'm not going to question all the league stuff, but this is the team that has a little bit of room, and moving him or getting rid of him could give them a little bit more room. But I still think that it's just I think they're caught in bad contracts. I think they're going to have a hard time getting out from them, and that the D is going to be if it breaks down like it did before. It doesn't matter if you have James Reimer better than Jones. It's not going to work, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the problem with Evander Kane is you can't trade him. You will not be able to trade him right now. It doesn't matter how well he played last year. It's all of that off-ice baggage that he's got, and that's just not from being with the Sharks. That goes all the way back to his days with the Winnipeg Jets. That was one of the big reasons why they got rid of him, was because he was becoming a problem in the dressing room. So, but this is a guy that, as talented as he is, he's got a big contract, $7 million a season. He as I said, he's got all these gambling allegations. His personal life is just a mess. And now you've got, some of his teammates don't want to be on the team if he's there. But what this is going to take is, honest to God, if they're going to get through this season, because you're not going to be able to trade him, they're going to all have to sit down with him And it's going to be up to the coaching staff. They're going to have to get these guys all on the same page. That's going to mean Evander Kane starts showing some maturity and starts, adhering to team rules and stop putting himself above the team. And it's going to mean for his teammates to, give him another chance, because let's face it, he played great for them last season. He was their leading scorer. He had a terrific season, but all that off ice stuff is going to have to be sorted out, or else, this team's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess next, LA Kings. And I remember, I think it was Isaiah spoke to it one time, that we all feel that the league is so much better when teams like the Rangers, the Bruins, the Flyers, the Canadians, they all are better. They're all better teams. And I'm starting to lean towards, and you guys can weigh in on this, I'm leaning towards the fact that, with the addition of like ESPN now in the games, and all the places that ESPN is on, in bars, restaurants, people are going to get hockey by mistake. And I think a little Hollywood, a little LA Kings cannot be, a bad thing for hockey. Hockey goes Hollywood. I think it's more exposure. I think this is a team that if they're better, I think it's better for the league that they're better now. The one thing, my biggest question is, I know with acquisition of Danault, that I'm thinking, like, is he a true number 2C? And that's going to be the question. Otherwise, I think they overpaid a little bit. But either way, it's going to be they're better. Like I said, I don't think they're better enough. They might be on one of those spots to maybe get into the playoffs if they have a good run and they can make some moves at the deadline. I think they have a chance. But like I said, it's going to be interesting. I want them to be good because I think it'll be good for the league.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they are better, and I agree with your take on Danault as well. But the thing is, too, with Danault, let's look at it this way: if he's not as good as the second line center, he can go into that third line spot. Yeah, you'll have an expensive third line center on your hands, but on the other hand, though, too, if he, maybe if he's not good enough as a second line center, it might mean because one of their young kids, maybe like a Quentin Byfield, maybe they're ready for that role. Because in the meantime, hey, if he is good enough, if Danault is good enough as a second line center, he helps buy some time for those kids to develop. It takes pressure off of them. And remember that the younger players they already have quite a few promising young players in the lineup who have shown improvement. Like you think guys like Gabe Vilardi, Alex Aiello. Well, he's 27. He's not that young, but I mean he has been part of. He's younger if you compare him to say a Kopitar or Dustin Brown. Adrian Kempe's another one. And, you look on their defense as well. And, I like that they brought in Alex Edler. He can be on their third pairing as a puck-moving guy and can help their power play, because that was something that really suffered last year. They're better. And if their kids step up, then, they could have a shot to make the playoffs. They could have a shot. I'm on the same page as you, as I'm not ready to fully say, oh, yeah, they're in. But if things break right for them, especially if their kids get better, they could have a shot.
Oh, here's a question. Speaking of their kids, do you think Turcotte gets a call-up later in the season?
It'll be interesting to see. He's another one, that I'm going to be keeping, because he's getting close. He's got to be,
Yeah, he's 20. He's got a little more meat on him. Yeah, he played well in the juniors. So I just expect that it's going to be hard to keep him down. I think it's better that maybe he starts down there and eases back into it, but he's definitely in my opinion, got a shot at it.
Yeah.
And I guess that leaves us in the Pacific. That leads us with Edmonton, which I'm a little confused by what Edmonton did. Am I the only one? Oh, okay, good.
A lot of people are confused with what Edmonton did.
I mean, it's like on paper it was a lot of different moves, but they all look like they were just training the same player for somebody else. So, I mean, what's your take?
Well, some of the moves I liked. Bringing in Warren Fogle, I like that move. I think that's an underrated move that they did there. Fogle was he was kind of buried a bit there in Carolina. And now he's going to get more of an opportunity to move up into I believe into a second line role if he gets that opportunity. I don't mind them bringing in Zach Hyman. What I have a problem with is with his contract. That was wholly overpayment, Batman. That's a lot of money for a guy for his role. The best you can hope for is okay, let's hope that in the front 3 to 4 years of that deal, he plays really well, because in the back half, that's going to get ugly. But, and honestly, I don't dislike the Duncan Keith acquisition. Some people lost their minds about, they gave up Caleb Jones. Caleb Jones was having trouble cracking their lineup on a full-time basis. So I'm not that concerned about that. As long as he's in that second pairing role where he's not having to babysit young defenseman like he had to do in Chicago the last 3 years, because I think that really adversely affected his performance too. I mean, I know how old he is, and I realize, he's not the Duncan Keith of 5 to 7 years ago, but I still think, playing a lesser role and with a good defense partner. I don't know if Cody Ceci is that guy or if it'll be Evan Bouchard, but I think he could be a good leadership addition for them, which is something I really think they need to try and get them over the hump. But I'm still really, really puzzled by their goaltending situation. The goaltending hasn't changed. And, you've got a very fragile Mike Smith back there. When he's healthy, he plays terrific. But he's 39, and you're soon going to get to the point where you're going to have to wrap him up in bubble paper, to prevent him from getting hurt. If not, it's Mikko Koskinen, who you have very little confidence in to fill the gap if he gets hurt for any significant length of time. So once again, they'll go as far as, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl will carry them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You just keep waiting for Edmonton to make a really shrewd maneuver to do something to improve one of those weak spots, whether it's, I guess they're okay at center, but they really could use a premier defenseman, but particularly in goal. They're just stuck in the mud there. That's
well, Darnell Nurse has gotten better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I
Darnell
like that
Nurse
player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like the player, no doubt about it. What he got paid was obscene, though. So,
well, hey, this was a good year to be a restricted free agent defenseman.
You tell me about it. We'll get to the Flyers and why I'm so happy they did what they did to avoid that whole circus. But let's go over to the Central Division, Lyle, and take a look at the Minnesota Wild. Let me see. They lose Ryan Suter. Have they officially lost Zach Parise yet?
Oh yeah, Zach. Well, he hasn't signed with anybody, but he's gone. But Suter and Parise, they're gonna be coming back to haunt them in terms of their buyout. Not this season, but starting from years 2 through 4, they're not going to have a heck of a whole lot of cap space between. Well, they'll have a big hole of 12 to 14 million during each of those 3 seasons of dead cap space, so that's going to hurt them. They didn't make a lot of big additions, but to be honest, I think they're a better team. I still think they're a better team, and maybe losing Ryan Suter kind of hurts a bit, but Zach Parise, it just wasn't working out there, so that's kind of a good idea to at least he's having to worry about him being a potential problem in the dressing room if he's unhappy with his playing time. The big issue, of course, is with Kirill Kaprizov with the dollar bill Kirill, but and that threat of from his agent that he could sign a 1-year deal for 8 figures with Moscow and the KHL. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. I'm not buying that. I think that's a total bluff. They're trying to get a short-term deal for him so he can get to free agency quicker, and then they can really cash in, right? But I think they'll come to an agreement probably on a 4 or 5 year deal. It'll be worth about $9 million a season. And that's going to sound like a lot for a guy who's only got 55 NHL games. But, oh boy, he really impressed in those 55 NHL games. So, I see them as a team that can potentially be on the rise. But it's going to, at least for this year, I think they're going to be in good shape. After that, it's going to be really interesting to see how they're going to be able to improve with, 12 to 14 million of dead cap space for 3 more years, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's got a real game of chicken between Kaprizov's agent and Bill Guerin. It'll be interesting to watch that thing play out. So why don't we talk about a team that a lot of people, the pundits, think with some moves that were a bit of a gamble and, a little risky, but they're going for it. The Chicago Blackhawks. They lose Pius Suter, Adam Boqvist, Vinny Nostroza. They traded Zadorov to Calgary, David Kampf, and of course Duncan Keith. But they bring in Marc-Andre Fleury, and they convince him, hey, you got to play. Come on, you got another year left. Jake McCabe, Tyler Johnson, Seth Jones for an enormous amount of money. Caleb Jones' brother. And, it's big expectations. Are the fans getting their hopes up for nothing, or can they pull a one-off kind of season for the Chicago Blackhawks, knowing that you have Kane and Taves is back?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It's so hard to kind of figure, because it was supposed to be, okay, we're kind of going into it's not a rebuild, but it's like a smaller rebuild. But then, they did better than expected last year, and that was without Jonathan Toews. So, okay, let's go for it. I think the goaltending's better with Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think Fleury's going to play well because he's such a competitive guy. Yeah, behind that happy, easygoing smile lurks the heart of a hardworking, never say die competitor. Mm-hmm. So I think he's going to come out his best. He's going to find it challenging with that defense. It's not going to be the same defense he had in Vegas, but I think he's going to give them. He'll be an improvement between the pipes compared to what they had. Seth Jones, that one's going to be interesting. Up until this past season, Seth Jones was everybody's darling on defense. He really was. Everybody was blown away by how the heavy minutes he was able to log. Especially for the Blue Jackets, especially during the last year's playoffs, where he finished the playoffs in limited time, and he still had more average ice time per game than any other blue liner in the postseason. But then he has a bad year this year, and everybody, and I'm going to say it to be blunt, everybody's shitting on him. And I'm sitting here going, well, yeah, but, that was a bad season in Columbus. And I just think everybody was just sick and tired and fed up with John Tortorella. Torts is a terrific coach, but he's the type of coach that has a limited shelf life. And I just think, Jones, was part of it. Now, you can question, well, he could have been a better leader. He could have been better on ice, or maybe he just had enough. And I think we're going to see him improve. He knows what he's getting into in Chicago, but I think he's up for that challenge. And we can quibble about the big contract he got all you want. At the end of the day, though, I think we're going to see a big bounce-back season for Seth Jones. And if we do, we're going to see a Blackhawks team that I think is going to be quite competitive and could be a playoff contender.
Interesting. Dylan Strome going to be part of that? Do you think that he'll get moved before the season, or sometime he'll be used as a chip?
Oh, absolutely. It just doesn't seem to be working. Maybe they move him. I think perhaps a team like the Ottawa Senators might be interested in him because they're looking for a center. Maybe another club might be willing to give him a go. If he doesn't, well, they'll keep him, see how he performs, and maybe try and trade him later. But based on the moves that they made and with the younger players that they've got in their roster now, and let's be honest, once Kirby Dach came in, I think it was pretty much guaranteed that Dylan Strome was going to be knocked down to third line duty. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But having Jonathan Toews back, if he comes back as expected, along with Kirby Dach as your second line center, I think they'll be in pretty good shape.
Yep, should be very interesting to watch them. They'll get a lot of national TV games, I bet. Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't we move up to Winnipeg? They bring Nate Schmidt in, trying to kind of get his career back on track because he played so well in Washington and Vegas. Brendan Dillon, Riley Nash, and they lose Laurent Brossoit, Mason Appleton, Matthew Perreault, Trevor Lewis, and a couple other guys, including Nate Thompson, who came to Philadelphia. What's your overall assessment? This is another team, at least they have something in goal. but you wonder about their center depth and whether they can ever break through and become a real contender.
Well, I mean, if Pierre-Luc Dubois can put last season's subpar performance behind him, I think they'll be all right at center, because you still have Mark Scheifele, who's one of the best in the league, when he's not taking run at guys, headhunting, scoring game, empty net goals. So boy, that was a funny heel turn, wasn't it? Nobody saw that swerve coming. But anyway, I
agree.
Yeah, but if Pierre-Luc Dubois returns to form, then I think they'll be absolutely fine, because they also got Adam Lowry as their third line center. So I think they'll be okay if Dubois, regains his form. I like the moves they made on defense. Defense was really their weak point for the last couple of years. And yeah, if it hadn't been for Connor Hellebuck, it would have been ugly. But the Canadians in the playoffs exposed that blue line weakness in the playoffs. So they bringing in Brendan Dillon's a good guy in there. Nate Schmidt could, definitely, I think could probably benefit, because it wasn't working out for him with Vancouver. And they've got a couple of kids there as well. Some young defensemen that Sandberg is one they're going to bring. Maybe looking at bringing in. At some point, Dylan Sandberg, Ville Heinola, he's had a few games under his belt, so I think they'll probably try and see if they can get him into the roster as well. If one of those two kids or both of them come up and play well, then I think the Jets will be a more improved team. But I definitely think even if those kids don't make that jump, I think their defense is better now than what they had last season.
Yeah, definitely. So we have to go to definitely a rebuilding situation. The Nashville Predators are caught betwixt and between. They couldn't get rid of at least one of their high-priced centers, who they're obviously not real happy with. But they bring in David Rittich to help out in goal. And Phil Myers, of course, in a trade where they, let go of Ryan Ellis, Cody Glass. And, of course, leaving, they lost also Victor Arvidsson, where he went to Los Angeles.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric Holla, useful player. Of course, Pekka Rinne, after an excellent career, called it quits. So, David Poyle's kind of left holding the bag a little bit. Maybe had some hopes that he could work some things out with Ron Francis out in Seattle, and yet here they have the two $8 million centers.
Yeah, and they're going to be stuck with him for the foreseeable future. Unless, some kind of deal can be made if they're willing to bundle it. Yeah, I'm sure a team that's got a lot of cap space that's rebuilding would be more than happy to take one of those two guys off their hands if they're also willing to throw in like a first round pick and a top prospect in the deal.
Right.
But Poyle's not going to do that. So, yeah, you're kind of going to be hoping that Duchesne and Johansson maybe, maybe an 82-game schedule, they might be able to bounce back. The guy I'm going to be watching closely in all this is Philip Forsberg, because he's going to be a UFA next year. Let's face it, he's the straw that stirs the drink for their offense. And, if things aren't going very well there in Nashville this season, you have to wonder, is he going to want to go somewhere else? And if that happens, if the Preds are out of the playoffs, do they consider trading him? He's like with Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary. I'm going to be watching Forsberg's contract situation this season in conjunction with how the Predators are doing.
Yeah, I mean, the bidding for him will be through the roof if it gets to that. So, that'll be a very interesting situation. Definitely worth watching. So we move to what may be one of the biggest ongoing disaster spots in the NHL with the Arizona Coyotes. And listen, big wholesale changes to indicate, yes, we're still rebuilding. We still don't really have any money. And after this year, we don't really have a building. I could go through the moves, but I mean, outside of Shane Gostisbehere, which basically was a cap dump where they wanted the draft picks more than they actually wanted the player, and there's really not much of note. This is a team really going nowhere.
Well, they're going nowhere this season, but with a purpose, and the purpose is welcome to the tank. Because listen, I like the moves that GM Bill Armstrong's done, because if you look what he's doing, he is definitely building for the future. I mean, he's got 5 picks in the second round alone. He's got 2 picks in the first round, and that's in next year's draft. he's also loaded up for the other, for the following years after that. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely, the moves that he made, yeah, I mean, taking on Gostisbehere and that. But, I mean, he got a really good, promising young defenseman in Connor Timmins in the Darcy Kemper trade with Colorado.
Right.
You bring in a guy like Antoine Roussel. It's not too bad either. Yeah, you traded away a lot of other guys, including, like I said, Kemper and Garland. But, yeah, this is a tank, as I said, but a tank with a purpose, because they're going for that first overall pick next year. And while we all know that just because you tank the season is no guarantee you're going to get it, the way the draft odds have been changed, yeah, they've got a better chance. If not, they're definitely going to be in a terrific position to secure themselves a top 3 pick in next year's draft. And you got to figure there's going to be other guys that are going to be on the move before the season's out. I mean, Phil Kessel, when most of his salary's eaten up by the trade deadline, yeah, he's going to be trade bait, and there'll be a playoff team that'll go after him. Absolutely. You figure a guy like Anton Strawman, he'll still have, there'll still be some teams that'll have some interest in him. So, but the guys are not going to trade. I mean, he's not going to trade a guy like Jacob Chikrin. We keep, maybe he'll trade Chikrin. He's not going to trade him. Not trading him. We hear a lot about Christian Dvorak, but I just get the sense that Armstrong is really reluctant to move him. Not saying he won't if he got a sweetheart offer, but I really think he also sees Christian Dvorak as part of that rebuild that he wants to do. And Dvorak's under contract for 4 seasons. So this isn't a case of, he'll be gone in a year or two. Like, no, he can still be a long-term part of their rebuild. So I think I'm more interested in where they're going to be playing after this season than anything else.
Yeah, that's it's up in the air. It could be a leverage play by Glendale, so...
Could be, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. The vibe seems different this time. It just seems really different this time.
Yeah. Anybody been to Houston? Spotted? Checking some places out?
Yeah, exactly. Remember what happened with the Thrashers when there were people seen in Winnipeg and everybody dismissed it, and then they wound up in Winnipeg. The only difference is this time the reason why the Thrashers moved is because the ownership had bailed, but that's not the case here with the Coyotes. So. Yeah, gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
anyway.
And if I'm a Flyers fan, and the winds are shifting in a certain direction, Christian Dvorak is a player that I would love Chuck Fletcher to take a crack at, because I think they missed some opportunities. We'll get to that later. Let's get to the St. Louis Blues. It's pretty simple. They bring in Buchnevich for Sammy Blais. And Brandon Saad, who showed he's still got some life in his legs after a couple average seasons in Chicago. And out goes Jaden Schwartz, Vince Dunn, Mike Hoffman. And this is still a good team. But, the soap opera that is Vladimir Tarasenko is still ongoing. So give us your assessment of what's going down in St. Louis.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, what the moves that they made, getting Buchnevich and Saad and, for their forward lines and shipping out Schwartz and Hoffman, I think they're a better team just from that. Jaden Schwartz, God love him, terrific player, still is. But come on, I mean, Buchnevich, that's a terrific pickup. Brandon Saad, that's a terrific pickup. So, and Mike Hoffman is just a one-dimensional guy. Let's be honest. He'll help your power play, but he's useless for defensively. So, yeah. But you're right. It's the Tarasenko situation, and yeah, that one is really, really interesting because just of how quickly that relationship between Tarasenko and the team just deteriorated. When I say the team, obviously, I mean the management and their medical staff. There are teams interested in Tarasenko. They are there. But they don't want to pick up that full contract, which $7.5 million for this season and next. Or if they do, they want something else in there too. Besides Tarasenko, they want a little sweetener in there. And Doug Armstrong does not want to pick up part of Tarasenko's contract, nor does he want to give up any sweeteners. So that's kind of the situation we're in right now. I mean, yeah, Tarasenko has, I believe, a 10-team no-trade list, but at this point, from what I've been hearing and reading, he's willing to waive that to go pretty much anywhere. So, yeah. But there are teams like he's been linked to the New York Islanders. I don't know how they'll be able to pull that off, and we'll talk about the Islanders later, but you can't rule out anything when you're talking about Lou Lamoriello. The New Jersey Devils, I know that they brought in Thomas Tatar, and again, we'll get to them sooner, but they still have the cap space, and they could still be looking for another forward. So I wouldn't rule him out, or him going to the Devils either. But otherwise, yeah, the number of teams have really, really shrunk down. So this could be something that drags on until we get up to the start of training camp. It could be one of those deals that he gets moved like the day before training camp opens. It could be one of those sort of things.
Yeah, and for the record, that's 4 surgeries that Tarasenko has had. So that's
I believe it's 3.
It's
3,
but I have a source that says they knew he had one before he had one back in Russia or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's well, officially 3.
Officially.
Officially.
You know how that works. It's kind of like the 72 Olympic basketball. But, yeah. Okay, so we move on to a great team that the Colorado Avalanche are still a terrific contending team. But will their offseason be defined by making somewhat of a lopsided, desperate trade to acquire Darcy Kemper after negotiations with Philip Grubauer fell apart and they lost some good talent? Guys like Brandon Saad, Ryan Graves, Connor Timmins, the player you mentioned earlier. I mean, they picked
Donskoy as well.
Yeah, Donskoy, definitely. So, what do Ryan Murray, Darren Helm, and Curtis McDermott, who's really just a tough guy? It's interesting. It looks like they took a step back a little bit.
That's my take on that as well. It's not that they're a terrible team. Good Lord. I mean, even for a team that's taken a step back, good Lord. Every team should have a team that takes a step back like that with that much talent. When you all those guys you rattled off that they lost, it's going to make it harder for them to win the cup this season. I'm not saying they can't do it with what they got, and let's not forget. I mean, they still do have that pipeline of young talent where you got guys, especially like Bo Byram, who's going to be play a much bigger role this season, obviously. They also have Shane Bowers in their system as well. He's another one. Alex Newhook is another kid that they think very highly of. So, if those kids come up and play well, and that could offset that absence. But, the big question mark is going to be with Darcy Kemper, because when Kemper's healthy, as we've seen, he's outstanding. Yeah. He is absolutely outstanding. I mean, he was the guy. Listen, he was the guy for them, for the Coyotes for the last year. He was the reason the Coyotes even made the playoffs last year in that expanded format, and then upset the Nashville Predators. And he was the guy who backstopped an underdog Canadian team to a world championship this year. So when he's healthy, he's outstanding, but he hasn't been healthy a lot in the last 3 years, and that concerns me. And especially when you're still going with Pavel Francouz. How do you pronounce that?
Right? Yeah.
Francouz, yeah. And he missed all of last season with an injury, and apparently, you're still kind of sort of going to be going with him again as your backup, I guess. We'll see. So there's kind of a question mark there beyond him. But I still see the Avs as a contender, but I think unless some of those kids step up and really step in and fill terrific roles, I think they've taken a bit of about maybe a half a step back this season.
Yeah. Yeah. So we finish up in the Central Division by talking about the Dallas Stars. So they won I think they won. I don't know if you'll tell us whether they acquired Ryan Suter, who's still a good player. He's not a top pair defenseman. They kind of replaced Jamie Alexiak with Yanni Hakanpää, kind of similar right-handed version of Alexiak, maybe not quite as good. They bring in Holtby at the backup. Michael Raffles, kind of a Swiss Army knife, kind of on the decline. Luke Glendening, and they lose Jason Dickinson, Mark Pysyk, Andrew Cogliano, and Justin Dowling. So where is this team? It's still dependent on players like Tyler
Seguin,
right?
Yeah, Jamie Benn. There's still a club that's, they're still, especially up front, they're really looking at those older aging forwards to carry the load one more time. Guys like Radulov and the ageless Joe Pavelski. My God, he's amazing.
Amazing, it's great.
Oh yeah. And listen, and their defense is fantastic. I mean, you look at that top four defense: Esa Lindell, John Klingberg, Ryan Suter, you mentioned, and Miro Heiskanen, who I believe is their best all-around defenseman. Yeah. That's a top four any team in the league would kill to have. So defensively, they're sound, no worries there. And the goaltending is ridiculously deep. And I say that, and I know it's like, well, yeah, but Braden Holtby's not as good as he was, and Ben Bishop has we don't know if he's going to be back with the knee injury and that, but it's like, yeah, but Anton Khudobin, he did very well carrying the load for them when Ben Bishop was sidelined. I mean, he got them to the Stanley Cup final, for God's sake, But they've also got Jake Ottinger, very promising young goaltender. He's their goalie of the future.
Right.
Yeah. And the question is just going to be, what I'm going to be watching there is how that all shakes out. Because look, if Ben Bishop can't play, well, the theory is, well, they'll go with Khudobin and Holtby and just send Ottinger back down, to the minors because he's waiver exempt. And they'll just go with those two and see how things go, and maybe bring Ottinger up again at some other point. But if Ottinger outplays those guys in training camp, you cannot, in good conscience, send that kid back down if he's your best goalie, So
no, especially with some of the health issues they've had with some of these guys.
Oh yeah, well,
especially Bishop, really.
Yeah. Well, Bishop is still a big question mark. Again, I'll believe he's going to be in the lineup this season if I see him. If I see him out there on the opening night roster, for God's sake. But maybe Holtby gets traded, but a more likely scenario is Khudobin gets traded. And I'll tell you, a team that would probably keep a close eye on him would be the Edmonton Oilers. I really think the Oilers would be very interested if he hits the market. But that's the situation I'm going to be keeping an eye on, is their goaltending. Other than that, up front, if you can get maybe some of the younger guys to maybe step up a little more, maybe if Gurionov, if he can regain the scoring form that he had the previous season, Rupe Heinz, if he can stay healthy, he's a terrific all-around forward for them. But he gets banged up a lot, that style of play. Jason Robertson, that kid, like I said, I mean, he had a tremendous rookie season. So I think if those kids can keep playing as well as they're capable of, then they could be in good shape then going forward offensively.
Yeah, they just need a couple of those older guys like Radulov and Pavelski to keep, churning until these other kids can take a bigger bite of the apple.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Chef, we're going to go over to the Atlantic Division, and I guess we're going to start out with Florida, who at the last minute, I don't think we had it quite in our roster, added Joe Thornton, still trying to hang around to get a cup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jumbo Joe.
I mean, it was funny because I'm a big Sharks fan on the down low, because when they came in, that was like NHL. We remember it on Tega. That was the game, and you could play San Jose. And I wanted San Jose to beat the Oilers all the time, but they always crushed them. But yeah, so I'm happy that Thornton's back in, but I don't think it does wonders for I think they're still where they are. I mean, they're gonna. I mean, Spencer Knight will be something to behold. I think he's gonna be a really good, solid goalie. Everybody else on the team, kind of like they got Gudis now. What else do they got? I mean,
they got Sam Reinhart, Wenberg with Reinhart, and that, to me, that's a major upgrade.
I'm gonna steal one of your sayings. I can see them sitting there going, leaving me wanting. Like, I could see this team supposedly, not winning as much as they should, whether they get in their own heads or whatever it is. I can just see this team not winning like they should. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. To me, the Panthers are one of the teams to watch this season. And I mean that in a good way because, man, they showed a lot last season. And, you know, they're going to have Joel Quenneville. You know, when you got Joel Quenneville behind the bench, you know, and the depth that they got now, I mean, bringing in Sam Bennett, you know, before the trade deadline, that was that was an impressive move. And, you know, yeah, you bring in Reinhart, they're going for it. You know, Bill Zito, you know, they're going for it here. And, you know, their defense, they'll have a healthy Aaron Ekblad because they really missed his presence in that series against Tampa Bay. Because that series was really entertaining. It really, really was. You know, they showed me something in that one. I mean, I still expected the Panthers to lose that one. I figured that the Lightning was going to win. Let me say I wasn't surprised that the Lightning won. But they gave them a good run for their money. And, you know, I think that this season going in, they realize now just how good they are. And I'm expecting them to be among the better teams in the league. I would not be surprised to see them be among the top teams in the league this season.
Yep. You're not going to get any argument from me, especially if Spencer Knight takes a bigger chunk of the action. They're you know, they're going to give Bob a chance with that contract. But
Bobrovsky, Bobrovsky's going to get his playing time in. But let's be honest, if Spencer Knight's winning the bulk of the game, it'll be like what we saw with Chris Driedger. You know, if he's winning more games, you go with the hot hand. So, but Spencer Knight, he's ready for prime time, and if he plays as well as we all expect that he's going to play, then that's another reason why I believe that they're going to be among the top teams in the league this season. And Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau, I mean, let's be honest, if those guys played in a bigger market, everybody would be singing their praises from the rooftops. You know, we would hear so much more about them. But we haven't for so many years because the Panthers for a long time weren't that good. But now they're really good, and I think the rest of the league is going to get a better appreciation of just how good they are. And when I say the rest of the league, I'm not talking players. They know how good these guys are. I'm talking fans and I'm talking pundits. They're going to really start to go, geez, you know, we really should have paid more attention to these guys. They're really damn good.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree.
Awesome. And now Boston. Now, this one got me thinking here. This could be good or bad, but I don't know how much of a change it is. I mean, they got Olmark in, Foligno in, Hula in. They lost Krejci, Kase, Halak. It seems to be kind of a wash. But I see that they could have a problem at center, much like a lot of other teams in the league. But very much up in the air is still if the goalie situation, if Rask even comes back or what the deal is there. What's your thoughts?
Oh, I don't disagree with that take at all. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you know, they still have an impressive first line. You know, having Taylor Hall for, you know, an entire season is going to make a difference too. But yeah, losing David Krejci hurts.
Yep.
That really hurts. And they're going to stick Charlie Coyle in there, but everybody knows, he's not going to be there for long. If they can find themselves a replacement. Why do you think, you know, Bruce Cassidy keeps saying, you know, the door is always open for David Krejci to return? You know, big hint, Dave, you know, if you don't find things over in the Czech Republic as much fun as you thought it was going to be, you can always come on back.
Yeah, that's like the Flyers last year with Matt Niskanen. Like they kept thinking, maybe we'll come back halfway through the year.
Yeah, you know, if retirement's kind of boring, you know, come back. The door's always open. I really see them being busy in the trade market. If any decent second line center becomes available over the course of the season that they can land, they will definitely go after them. Charlie Coyle is just really in placeholder mode there until they can find something better. But the goaltending is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Jeremy Swayman showed a lot of potential last season. But let's be honest, Tuukka Rask was still their man. It was still their guy. Linus Ullmark put up decent numbers on horrible Buffalo Sabres teams.
Yeah.
But is he that good? You know, I mean, we've seen this sort of thing before where you see goalies who put up decent numbers on bad teams. He goes to a good team and you think, oh, yeah, he's going to be great. And they turned out to be terrible. So, yeah, have a hard time sitting down trying to justify the Sabres as being like a top 4 team in the East. I see them more slipping down into like in the bottom 4. Like, no, I don't mean bottom 4 as in like bottom of the standings, but the bottom 4 playoff positions. They could even be, God help me, maybe even a wild card club because, they've got that top line, but there's just questions there. There's questions at center. There's questions in goal. And until those are suitably addressed, they got the talent to be a playoff team, but I don't think they're a top 4 team in the East.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that brings us to Toronto, and I personally think fans will be very disappointed. They got too much tied up and honestly too little up top. 3 guys. They needed to spread that out, I guess, a little bit more, and those guys got to start playing like they need, that they're getting paid. But it doesn't leave room for the rest of the forward core, in my opinion. And you still have your number 1 goalie is Mrazek. And I'm not comfortable there. I mean, he was in Philly. We got a firsthand look. I mean, I think he was lightning in a bottle in the playoffs for, the Canes. But I can't, he still can't sell me on it because I've seen the product before, and you're just repackaging it.
Yeah, I don't see. I look at this team and I don't see any improvements. Where's the improvement? Okay. Well, you got rid of Freddie Anderson. You brought in Mrazek. Okay, fine. I think they're going to probably put more emphasis on Jack Campbell, but as their starter. But I wouldn't be surprised if both guys split the load, evenly over the course of the season. But where's the improvement? You lost Zach Hyman to free agency, and I don't blame them. I mean, what he was asking for was ridiculous. So ridiculous, in fact, the Edmonton Oilers paid it. So there we are. Yeah. But you replace him with Nick Ritchie. So, this is an improvement. Nick Ritchie has never showed me anything that would suggest that he's the same caliber as a Zach Hyman. Yeah. I'm sorry, but he really hasn't. Andre Cache, if he's healthy, if his concussion issues are finally behind him, he could certainly help provide some scoring depth there. Michael Bunting is considered kind of a bit of this sort of dark horse because he very quietly, had a decent season. I believe was with Arizona last year, if memory serves. Yes, it does. Yeah. Yep. But let's face it, that was just a 21 game, that was just 21 games, 10 goals, 13 points, 21 games. Impressive. But does that mean he's going to do it again? Does this mean that this is a late blossoming star they've got on their hands? For their sake, he better be. Because I don't see any improvement here. As you pointed out, they've got way too much money tied up in 4 forwards, and that has handcuffed them. They cannot improve their overall depth. And I don't see a difference here for the team that, if anything, there's no improvement. This is still the same team that lost to the Montreal Canadiens, just a little bit weaker because you don't have Zach Hyman. So, it's... going to be interesting. I agree with you. I think, but honestly, I don't think Leafs fans are going to be going into this season with the same amount of heightened expectations as they had. I think that got cruelly brought down to earth this past spring by the Canadiens. And, I think the blinders are finally off. The bloom is off the rose for Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan. And if this team doesn't go deep in the playoffs, God help them if they get bounced in the first round again, because then there's going to be a bloodletting in the front office.
Yep, probably.
Yeah. All right, and then I'll talk to you about Montreal when we get there. But the next we have the Tampa Bay, the defending Stanley Cup 2-time back-to-back champions. Which, I mean, let's face it, we knew they were not going to be, with all the injured reserve they had and all that stuff and all the cap situation that they had. We knew it wasn't going to be the team that we thought, but literally they were going to lose like a whole line, but they did. I mean, Goudreau signed free agent. Somebody who got picked up by expansion was
Yanni Gourde.
Yanni Gourde, yeah. And so, I mean, did they get a little bit worse? Maybe. Are they still in a good spot? Yes, I think they'll be up there. I think they're still a top 3 team in their respective division. I think they're going to be there at the end. I I think it's just they're a very well-run organization. I think they played their cards right, and I just think they're going to be steady.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You have to like their chances for a three-peat. You really do. Because all their core players are still there, and, you've got the best goaltender in the world. And props to Marc-Andre Fleury and Carey Price and so on. But Andrei Vasilevsky is the best goaltender in the world, and he has been for the past 4 years. Okay? Yeah. That's just fact. They've got one of the best defensemen in the league in Victor Hedman, and a definite I keep calling him an up-and-comer, but, I mean, let's be honest, on any other team, he'd be the number one left-side defenseman, and that's in, Mikhail Sergachev.
Yeah.
Eric Cernak, everybody, he's so underrated and does just a tremendous job for them, and, they were able to hang on to him. Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, who, come on, folks, the guy's a superstar. Yep. Let's just call it the way it is, okay? He's broken through. Anthony Cirelli, this kid is one of the best two-way forwards in the game. Alex Killorn, just that buzzsaw on the left side, that left wing. So their top six is set. But what is going to hamper them, though, is losing that entire third line. That third line of Gord, Coleman, and Goudreau. I mean, good Lord, that was one of the best third lines in the league last season, and in last year's playoffs and in this year's playoffs. I mean, they killed penalties. They would go out and they would face off against the team's best scorers and shut them down. They could score timely goals. They always play with a lot of energy every time they hit the ice. And that's going to be very hard to replace. It really is. And again, I'm not saying that they can't repeat, but they're going to find it harder because they're going to be going with a whole new third line. It's going to be Ross Colton, Matthew Joseph, and Corey Perry. Yeah. And maybe on paper that works, but they're going to have to try and form some kind of chemistry. They'll have a full season to do it, but it'll be interesting to see if they gel or not. Because if they don't, then that could be a weakness that could ultimately cost them a chance for a third cup.
Yeah. Like I said, I was a San Jose Sharks fan. When they got Goudreau, I was so upset. I was like, there was somebody I've been following for like a couple of years, and I was like, this kid's he's gonna have a breakout, and he did. And it's a crying shame that I was hoping I had actually have him penciled in on my off-season acquisitions as an armchair GM for the Flyers. But moving on, as disappointing as life can be, I guess we'll hit the center now. 2 words, not yet. And another 2 words is maybe 2 years. But, I mean, they seem to have drafted well the last couple of years. They got some good stuff on the horizon. I just think the fans are going to have to suffer through it because, I mean, there's not a lot there. I mean, they got Murray. That was a good steal. But is he going to be as good as he was? Obviously not. And I think, like I said, it's you're going to still have to wait. You got some, eyes on the horizon there, and I think you're going to have to keep them there.
Yeah. The goaltending is a question mark because of Matt Murray with that injury history. Again, when he's healthy, he's terrific, but he's banged up so damn much. Anton Forsberger is, decent backup, but yeah, not going to be a guy that's going to carry it. But in terms of talent, the talent is really coming along. What they've drafted, they've done so well with that, the young talent that's coming up. I mean, Brady Tkachuk, of course, that's their, in my opinion, he's their captain, period, full stop.
He's a star.
Yeah. And, you had kids like, Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, who just seemed to come out of nowhere last season and put up really solid numbers for them, played very well. Tim Stutzel, of course, who was their, their one of their top picks there last year. He really showed that he belonged last season. I think we're going to see even more from him. He's just going to be even bigger and better. Shane Pinto came in, just had a brief toward the end of the season, but, he played like he belonged, 7 points in 12 games. And, the defense is still kind of interesting. Thomas Chabot being there, obviously. But Artem Zub, who came in last season, a 1-year deal and earned himself a new contract, played well. But you got kids, like Eric Brandstrom, they're still waiting for him to have his breakout. There's still some question marks there. So, yeah, they're a team that's much more competitive. They were definitely more competitive last season. And believe me, being up here in Canada, we saw a lot of them in the Canadian division. But that was also a good thing because we could really see how they were really starting to gel, really improving, getting better as the season was going along. So they're not going to be an easy 2 points by any stretch. But I'm with you. I think they're probably another year, maybe 2 years away. But they're getting better. They're definitely getting better.
Yeah. Okay, now it's time to talk about the Canadians. We're salivating. Definitely, like was talking about. Isaiah had mentioned a couple. They were a team built for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, and they still are a little bit, but they got to get there this year. I mean, in any other division, they would not have made it this past season. So, yeah. But they got, let's say, they got a little balls to them there with, they lost some of their grit but I just think that Price is going to have to carry this team way too much. And it's just, I don't see, I see them looking at the end of the season, be like 1 or 2 points out of the playoffs going, what happened? And what do you think?
Well, that's possible. I mean, obviously this team always goes as far as Carey Price can carry it. But to be fair, though, too, they've also got Jake Allen in there. And it's because of Jake Allen they made the playoffs last year. Because when Price was struggling and then when he got hurt, that's where you saw why they acquired Jake Allen last year. And he was able to help them. So they've got solid depth in goal. The defense, losing Shea Weber. Listen, Weber's offense has been in decline the last couple of years, and as we learned why the man's been playing injured with serious injuries for the last 3 years. But defensively, he was still, very solid, very strong. That's why they brought in David Savard. He'll play that physical shutdown role that they need. But yeah, they're going to need a kid like Alex Romanoff to really step up. He's, he showed some potential last season, but he's really going to need to take on a better role. Jeff Petrie, though, when he's healthy, is just an outstanding puck-moving defenseman. So they're in decent shape on the blue line, and they do have, toughness there as well. I mean, Joel Edmondson. I mean, he's again, you talk about a guy who's built for the playoffs. That was Joel Edmondson. For me, the key, though, is going to be up front, and it's going to be with Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Cole Caulfield. Those three kids, they really shone through for them in the playoffs this season. Suzuki and Caulfield more so than Kotkaniemi, who tends to be streaky, but they're going to be really relying on those three. I mean, they still have some listen, they still have some good veterans up front there, obviously. Tyler Toffoli, of course. Brendan Gallagher, who's the heart and soul and is probably going to be their captain. Josh Anderson as well. Another streaky player, but, big body and can score clutch goals. And if Jonathan Drouin comes back, if his issues have been sorted out and if he can return and have a healthy season, he'll help them production-wise as well. But it's going to come down to Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, and Caulfield. And if they can build on what they did in last year's playoffs, they're not going to be a Stanley Cup contender, but they could be very well a Stanley Cup team. Mm-hmm. But again, as long as those kids come through for them, that's going to be the key.
Okay, that hits us up with the Wings, which I think in a couple of years they're going to be something to be reckoned with. But like I said, it's with the previous with the Senators, it's not yet, and they got lots of moves coming and going. But for now, I think they're built a little bit better. They've gotten a little bit better, but they're built for the future, and I think they're doing it right there. I think they're going to have an interesting season. I don't know if they're going to contend so much, but they will be. They're amassing. I mean, I had to double check to make sure who their GM was. It's like, because I was sitting there going, he's collecting all these draft picks like he's Hextall. And it's amazing. It's like a fat kid at the ice cream store. I just see it and I go, okay, well, but I think they're just going to be a little bit, I think it's going to take a little bit longer, but they're going to be an interesting team to watch.
I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, they're going to be better. They were better last season, and, I like the moves that Yzerman made. I mean, bringing in Jacob Vrana at the trade deadline, let's face it, that was the move we were all talking about. Right. And, everybody was, oh, well, yeah, Taylor Hall. Oh, yeah, no. Wait a minute. Holy shit, Jacob Vrana. And he got like 3 pieces out of that for Anthony Mantha. What a move. So, bringing in Pius Suter, I like that move as well. Again, improving down. I mean, hey, why not? If the Blackhawks are willing to let him go, snap him up, see what he can do. The move, of course, that I think really is going to improve them was, of course, getting Alex Nedeljkovic, who was a Calder Trophy finalist this season and will be eligible for the Calder again this season, if you can believe it.
Wow.
But he's that young goalie they've been looking for, because they've been trying to draft for them. They weren't having much success there. They really didn't have anybody in their system who was ready to come up. But, Nedeljkovic drops in their lap, and it's just like, thank you, Carolina Hurricanes. Thank you. But bringing in Nick Leddy, I like that pickup as well. And, they kept Mark Stahl for the leadership. And, he had a good bounce back season last year.
Yeah, he did. He was
But
good.
they've got Moritz Seider as well. Philip Hronek, who's a very underrated puck-moving defenseman there as well. So, yeah, they're going to be better. But I agree with you. They're probably a couple of years out. They're heading in the right direction. Definitely trending in the right direction. And again, they're another one of those teams, like I said, like Ottawa. They're not going to be an easy 2 points. They're not going to be a pushover anymore. You're going to have to work to beat these guys. The future's bright for them. It's just the future's not this year.
That much is certain.
Yeah, just a question before you move ahead. Tyler Bertuzzi, now he's coming off a back surgery. Is he well enough to be a trade candidate still, or are they still waiting for him to heal and show that he can play?
Oh, yeah. By all accounts, I mean, the back surgery it was a success, and he's fully healthy. They still see him as part of their future. We'll see how this season plays out for him, obviously. He becomes a free agent in 2023, so in 2 years' time, an unrestricted free agent, I should say. So we'll kind of see how that plays out and how it fits. But his situation, it's a good point bringing him up, because it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out and if he does fit into their long-term plans.
Okay, so this might be a little bit of rocky, might be some turbulence here as we kind of crash land in Buffalo. I'll give it to you, Chef.
The dumpster fire that is Buffalo. All right. Okay. All
the
right.
Buffalo Sabres, the team the Arizona Coyotes are glad is in the league.
Yes,
right.
Because it takes all the heat off of them. Yeah.
Yep.
So, let's just. There's a lot of movement in Will Butcher, Mark Pisnick, Vinny
Hinostroza,
Hinostroza, Haig, Hayden Anderson, and Aaron Dell. Boy, wow. Aaron Dell, wow. That's a hell of a goalie core there, tandem or whatever. They lost Reinhardt, they lost Allmark, they lost McCabe, they lost Ristolainen and Borgen. Wow. I mean, it couldn't get any worse now for them, could it? Well, unless somebody said, guess what? We're trading Eichel, we're getting all this stuff back, and Eichel's going to be fine. I guess that's the only way that that could get any worse. If Eichel goes on and becomes, number 2 in the league behind, McDavid. But I mean, I'm at a loss for words with everything that's happening in Buffalo. I just don't. It's going to be a hard season for him.
Oh boy, is it ever? Yeah. And I gotta say right off bat, I mean, we laugh and kid and joke about Buffalo, but their fans deserve better than this shit. Yeah. And I'm being blunt, okay? They deserve better than this shit.
They're great fans.
It's been 10 years of garbage under the Pagulas. It was supposed to be so much better. And there's just, I don't know if it's just too much meddling from ownership. That could be part of it. I think a lot of the hires, the revolving door of coaches and general managers speaks for itself. And yeah, this, you wouldn't think it'd be possible to take a team that was in bad shape and make it worse, and they did. This isn't going to be pretty. The best you can hope for is that if Eichel comes back, because right now I don't see Jack Eichel getting traded until he's got a clean bill of health. And that means he returns to the Sabres, he plays, shows the world that, yeah, I'm still, a superstar. And then, of course, teams will come knocking down the door and they'll throw, huge offers at them. And then maybe they can get a return that forms a foundation of a rebuild. Listen, I give Kevyn Adams credit for doing the best he can with the bad hand that he's been given. I don't think he's made a lot of bad moves here. Ristolainen wasn't working out. Sam Reinhart obviously wanted out. So you got the best returns you could, and you move on. But at the end of the day here, yeah, if you're a Sabres fan, this just absolutely sucks. Yeah. As I said, the best you can hope for is just hope to God Eichel gets healthy enough that he can bring you back a quality return that you can build on, and just pray after that, because it's been 10 years of shit. It's going to be, for the foreseeable future, more shit.
They need new ownership.
Yeah, that is true. New ownership.
Fogle that just dropped the ball.
Yeah,
well, absolutely. But the sad thing is they're not going anywhere.
No.
They're not going anywhere. As much as people say new ownership, the Goulers aren't selling that team. No. Sabres fans are stuck with them. And, yeah, it's just the ride is going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, they helped Penn State build their program, so that's, They helped hockey a little bit somewhere.
Yeah, just not in Buffalo.
No, definitely not. Okay, so we go to the Metro Division as we're coming to the quarter pole here. The Columbus Blue Jackets are kind of like Buffalo and Arizona, but they actually have good ownership and good management. They are what they call GU, geographically undesirable for some reason. So they trade Cam Atkinson for Jake Voracek. They lose Seth Jones, Michael Delzato, Riley Nash. They bring in Adam Boqvist, Jake Bean, which might be a good. He's been promising for many years. Maybe this is the opportunity he needed, and Sean Cirelli. So maybe some shrewd pickups. I mean, they don't really have good center play. So what do you get? You get a playmaking winger and get more out of Patrick Laine and make him a better trade candidate. But other than that, it's really rough.
Yeah, but, again, though, I did like the returns, though, that they got. I mean, Adam Boqvist is going to be an excellent pickup on defense. Jake Bean is another one. And like you said, Jake Bean, the problem for Jake Bean was that he was playing for a team that just had a ridiculously deep blue line core, and he just had trouble cracking on a full-time basis. He's a very good defenseman. He's going to be a good fit there. Yeah. Voracek, the career's come full circle. He's back to where he started. But listen, he's going to be a pro there. He's going to do the best that he can for them, and he's still going to be a good player for them as well. They still have those issues at center, though. I mean, Sean Cirelli is not going to address it, at least on the top, the first line or the second line. Max Domi is sidelined, recovering from shoulder surgery. And quite frankly, Max Domi is a better winger than he is a center. He always has been. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you hope Jack Roslovic, that he can improve. You hope that this team under a different system can improve. It's going to be interesting to see how they adjust without Seth Jones there. I think, having Voracek back in there, okay, trade away Cam Atkinson, but you get Voracek in there, and I think they'll be okay with Jake there. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But, yeah, how they're going to handle, Seth Jones being gone. And let's not forget as well, the young goaltender, I always have trouble saying his name, and I'm so sorry, Kivlenieks.
Oh, yeah, Kivlenieks. Yeah, that's just a tragic
that tragedy. Yeah. And because they were going to it was either going to be Korpisalo or Muzlishkins who was going to get traded this summer. That was the game plan, and Kim Liniux was going to come up, and that's obviously out the window now. They're sticking with the tandem they've got for another season anyway. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic shakes out. But the search, I believe, will still continue to try and find that ever elusive scoring center that they need. So, but as you said, they're not in as bad a shape. This is a team I can see bouncing back. They're not going to be down near the bottom of the league. I can see them bouncing back. I think they're going to respond very positively under a new head coach. Do I see them as a playoff team? Marginal. Maybe a wild card team. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it, but they'll be better. But yeah, they still need to find that first line center.
Yeah, again, one of those teams that you're going to drop a couple points to a night here or a night there and be frustrated because, look, whatever you want to say about Torts, he taught that team a certain kind of culture, and they're very responsible. And if you're not on your game and you're just kind of jaking it out there, no pun intended, that you're gonna lose a couple points to a team. You're gonna look back and say we should have beat this club. So that's the kind of team that Columbus is going to be.
Well, yeah, and I mean what they basically did was promoted their assistant coach. So, but it's they're not going to stray too far from that whole ethos. I just think that they just needed just a different voice back there behind the bench. Somebody who's not going to be whipping them up all the time and to be quite as demanding. So, and hey, listen, if Line A bounces back, if he can, find whatever mojo he left behind in Winnipeg, hey, maybe they might even have a chance. But, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Now, one of the great other soap operas in the league is occurring in Carolina. And boy, did they poke the bear or what? So they lose Doug Hamilton, which is, look, if any team could afford to lose Dougie Hamilton, it was Carolina. He made mad money in New Jersey, and we'll get to that. So Mrazek, I don't think is a big loss, especially if you're bringing in Frederik Andersen. But they obviously didn't feel that Alex Nedeljkovic was going to be a goalie of the future, that they could win a cup with him ultimately for where they're at right now, because they are a cup contender. That's where the rubber has to meet the road. So they lose Warren Fogle. You mentioned about him earlier, Brock McGinn, Morgan Geekie, Yanni Hakanpää, we mentioned earlier, and Jake Bean, who now is going to get a chance. So they really bring in some controversial players. So Tony DeAngelo has some issues, I'll put it like that. They bring a stabilizer player in Derek Stepan. So maybe that'll certainly help that situation. I think Ethan Bear is an under-the-radar acquisition. Ian Cole, another stabilizer on defense. And Antti Ranta is a professional backup. What's your overall feeling? I think they've certainly lost more than they've gained. But this is still a really, really good team.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look, they're going to miss Dougie Hamilton back there. They are going to miss his offensive, contributions on the blue line. But I mean, you still have Jacob Slavin, who's one of the best all-around defensemen in the league. Brett Pesce's still there. Brady Shea is still there. Ethan Bear, as you said, underrated. And I think he's, maybe being out of Edmonton, maybe being away from that pressure in a Canadian market, I think maybe that'll also help his performance as well. But you look up front, though, my God, the embarrassment of riches that you've got just done, with Sebastian Aho, with Svechnikov, Vincent Trocheck, Marty Netcash, Trocheck, Niederreiter, and Tara Vinen, and of course, Jordan Stahl had a hell of a year last year. You talk about a bounce back performance. Good Lord, he had one of his best seasons in years. So they're doing just fine in terms of forward depth. Then, like you said, you bring in Derek Stepan. That's a good depth addition on your fourth line. The goaltending is still – that's going to be interesting too. Freddie Andersen, though, I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove, and I think I don't think he's unjustified in feeling that way because he got blamed often unfairly for the Leafs' inability to get past the first round during his tenure as their goaltender. Yes, he had a couple of bad games, of course, but he also had a team in front of him that shit the bed when it counted. So, I wouldn't put all the blame on Freddie Anderson. He's got something to prove. Ranta, as you said, professional backup, but does a very good job. Injuries, though, an issue for him as well.
Yeah.
So, again, I think the goaltending is a little better than what they had, but getting rid of Nedeljkovic, though, that one's still a head scratcher for me. They, as you said, they evidently feel that he's not quite ready for prime time, but it was like, geez, you garnered that from a Calder finalist. A Calder finalist doesn't have what you think it takes to be your goalie of the field. Like, what the hell? That one is still a head scratcher for me. Now, if Nedeljkovic doesn't play well in Detroit, well, then they'll be proven right. But if he plays well in Detroit, that's not going to look good for them. That's going to have to start raising some serious questions, and then on how they're evaluating some of their young talent. Because, I'm still puzzled by that move. I still don't believe they made that move.
The thing that gets me here, you could have still went out and got Freddie Anderson, but you spent $2 million for 2 years, which is a savings of $1 million, $1 million a year over Nedeljkovic, and you got $12 million plus in cap space. Like, what? You know what I mean? Something doesn't jibe here.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I understood why they let Dougie Hamilton go. That's what he was asking for was a lot of money. And we all know Tom Dundon, their owner, he has set figures for what he believes each player should be getting. And if you want to exceed that number, sorry, you'll have to go get it somewhere else. But the Nedeljkovic was not asking for ridiculous money. No. He really wasn't. And to just go, no, we're not going to pay you that. No, we're going to trade you. No, you're out of here. We don't want you. That's like, but the guy was a Calder Trophy finalist. What the hell? So
just pure serendipity for Steve Yzerman. That's the way I look at
it. Oh my Lord. Why is it when some general managers make dumb decisions, Steve Yzerman is there to go, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I think now when you're this close to being a real cup team, a team that can play shift for shift with Tampa Bay, that is not the time to be a skinflint. That is when you go out there and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to bend it a little bit. You have to. You only have a window so long. I know that a lot of these guys are terrific players like Natchez and all the other guys that you mentioned. I love the way they're set up front, but man, it's the goaltending that cost them. You bring in Anderson, you bring back Nedeljkovic, now you have $11 million and change. Like, really, what's the difference? Yeah,
exactly. So it's I just call it the Dundon effect, and we just move on, I guess.
Yeah. Dundon will be Carolina's Dunkirk, right? So
could be penny wise and pound foolish. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So we move on to the Capitals, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. They're hanging on to they were kind of a cup team. They had to let go of some salary to afford. They could bring back OV, and they lost Brendan Dillon, who's a very serviceable second pairing defenseman. And the Swiss Army knife, that is Michael Raffl, who played in Philadelphia for so many years. And I'm not aware that they really brought in anybody, but they're still a hell of a team that they know how to win. So if they're in a good groove, you never really can count them out.
No, I agree. You can't fully count them out, but there's still some question marks there. The goaltending right now. Samsonov is supposed to be their goalie of the future, but he made some, shall we say, questionable off-ice decisions that got him sick with COVID. Yeah. Not once, but twice. And he also broke, missed a team function as well. So you have to kind of wonder about his maturity in that regard. The defense, John Carlson, still terrific. 31 is, as I said, these defensemen are built for the long haul. I don't start ruling out defensemen as being past their prime until they hit 35. So I think they're still okay in that regard. With Justin Schultz as well, Dmitry Orlov, of course. But I mean, it's not, their defense isn't that much deeper beyond those three. Honestly, the depth just kind of falls off after that. Up front, I mean, Ovi's Ovi. Yeah, I know he's going to be 36 this fall, but I still think this guy is still good for 40 goals this season. I until we see a noticeable decline in his play, which we haven't seen, consider him a 40-goal scorer for this year. Nikki Backstrom, another one, very underrated and definitely stepped up in a leadership role when Obi was hurt, or not hurt, but when he was ill and sidelined. Kuznetsov. There's the enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped
fly
in
in the
mystery.
ointment.
Yeah, wrapped in bacon, I guess. I don't know. Wrapped in bacon, flavored with cocaine.
The Evander Kane of the of the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, and listen. Yeah, I know that it was interesting to hear, Brian McClellan, their general manager, say, "Well, we never said we were going to trade Kuznetsov." No, you never said it. No, the pundits said it. And where did the pundits get that info from? Now, maybe they got it from McClellan. Maybe they got it from somebody else on the team. But you had to know they're not happy with Kuznetsov. And he's got to clean up his act here, because this past season was just a disaster. You get sick with COVID twice. You miss a team function. Basically you're leading, your young goaltender astray, because they're a tight-knit group. They'll hang out together, but you're leading this kid astray here. I mean, you need to clean up your act, son. It's time to grow up. I mean, and it's a shame because, Kuznetsov, when they went on their Stanley Cup run, I mean, he was their leading scorer.
Yeah,
this guy you could count on in the playoffs to score big goals or set up, make big plays for you. And since then, it just seems like his give a damn factor has dropped to zero, and he needs to rediscover his motivation here. If he can come back fully motivated this season, well then, yeah, they'll be a better team for it. They still have some holes there, which I described, but they could still be a very dangerous team. But they need Kuznetsov to basically to smarten up if they want to get back to being a dangerous team.
Yep, 7.8 million AAV for the next 4 years. So,
yeah. Don't worry, you got Tom Wilson out there to do your headhunting again, so another season. So there's always that.
Yeah, there's always that. Just wondering if he could reestablish himself. With Vegas come a calling, who knows? They need a center though. You can't play with that. We'd have to get a replacement level player for him. So
yeah.
But maybe if it went sideways and they could be in players for. I'm just spitballing here. I mean, who needs a center? Just think of that team, and maybe if Kuznetsov can show that he's got his act together, and maybe the season's not going well, and it turns into let's see Ovi chase Gretzky kind of year. Who knows, right?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen there.
Yeah. So we move along to what I guess is still the Flyers' top rival. I think that's going to change over the next couple of years as this team ages out. But the Pittsburgh Penguins lost Jared McCann, Brandon Tanev, two pretty good players for them. And Freddie Goudreau, Cody Ceci. They bring in Danton Heinen, Brock McGinn, and Dominic Simon. That's a negative, a net negative. I know Tanev and McCann in particular played very well against the Flyers and against most teams. So, look, this is a team we keep waiting for the decline, but then they, at least in the regular season, have shown that they are viable as a playoff team.
Oh, yeah. And listen, as long as Sidney Crosby can still play even at 80% of his best, he'll put that team on his back and carry them there. That they will follow his lead. He's still one of the, Crosby doesn't get enough. And I know it's hard for you Flyers fans to admit this, but you got to admit he doesn't get enough credit for his leadership. He really doesn't. This is a guy who can still put a team on his back and make them one of the best teams in the regular season. Playoffs is a different story, and that's not Crosby's fault. But yeah, Malkin, like I said, this was definitely a weird season for him with injuries and all of that. Jason Zucker, he was brought in. He was supposed to be provide a boost to their offense. That didn't happen. Of course, to be fair, he did suffer a leg injury this season. That didn't help. Jeff Carter, I mean, he looked good when they brought him in the regular season. Didn't have a bad playoff, I don't think. No. So that's not a bad addition. But yeah, the regular season, the off-season additions they made. When you look at the guys, like you said, the guys they lost, McCann and Tanev, it's I don't know. The goaltending though, oh boy.
Yeah.
The goaltending. Tristan Jarry, what happened? Yeah. Well, they don't have much choice. They have to they're back with them again. And but if we see that mess that we saw last season, but worse if it carries on throughout the regular season, yeah. But I think we can all safely say that their days as a Stanley Cup contender are now well and truly over. Yeah. The most of the core players are 28 and older. I don't see a lot of young guys just scrolling through here in Cap Friendly. I'm not seeing really anybody who's under 25 other than Kapanen is 25. Right. But I don't see anybody under 25 who's going to come in and make a big difference here. John Marino in defense, okay, 24.
Right.
Then Marcus Pettersson there, but now there's but then you hear talk that maybe they might try and trade him. So shed some cap space and maybe bring in some of that truculence that Brian Burke loves so much. But otherwise, no. I mean, hey, listen, a regular season team that don't turn your back on them. They're going to run up wins. Yeah, they'll make the playoffs, but no, we can't take them seriously as a Stanley Cup contender anymore.
Yeah,
it's one of those teams where I'm both happy and upset and worried at the same time that Hextall's in charge. Because let's face it, I saw what he did for Philly. He managed to turn things around. He was very cap savvy and pick savvy. He got a lot of picks, but also at the same time, I know how long it took us. So I'm kind of happy that he's there. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just want to come out of it. Is that wrong?
No. You're being a fan, and that's okay. You're allowed. When you're talking about a hated rival, you're allowed.
Well, it's the baton death march of rebuilds. It's going to be long and painful, and
where patience gets stretched to the breaking point. Yeah, I hear you.
And
I hear you.
Yeah, and I think in Philadelphia, it gets a thumbs down because we're already at a breaking point. With Philadelphia, where national pundits are saying, well, we'll get to the Flyers, that they have 2 years to win and then it's rebuild time. So that's we'll get your feedback on that. But Ron Hextall, watching him is kind of like a subplot. But speaking of subplots, we go to the New York Rangers, and I'm going back in my mind maybe 70 years, and you might be saying to yourself, 70 years. Now, Lyle, you might remember this in the back of comic books, okay? Where the Charles Atlas ad, where it says, the insult that made a man out of Mac. Where the skinny little guy gets pushed around on the beach. He takes the Charles Atlas course, and now he comes back to smash the bully's face and win the girl back.
Now, and he's the hero of the beach.
That's right. So in honor of Charles Atlas, may he rest in peace, the New York Rangers took the beating that Tom Wilson put on the Rangers, and particularly on Artemi Panarin last year, which they had every right to be upset about it. And they have gone full knee-jerk on this. This is reactionary beyond anything anybody really thought they'd see. It probably cost – I mean, there's more to the personnel changes in the front office. I'll ask you about that. But you look at the acquisitions, they're going to be harder to play against. They felt like they had enough skill, especially with some of these kids they're grooming, and Lafreniere and Capo still haven't really come close to touching their ceiling yet. But still, I think they have just really overreacted to that whole incident. And I'll let you talk about maybe the front office first.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't disagree with your assessment at all. I mean, I'm sure Tom Wilson wakes up every morning with a song in his heart, knowing he lives rent free in the heads of the New York Rangers. But yeah, the front office move. I mean, Chris Drury is listen, I think that he's definitely got the chops to be a good general manager here.
Yeah.
When I saw that, they got rid of Jeff Gorton and John Davidson, but they're going to promote Chris Drury. It's like, well, okay, no, that's fine. I mean, promoting from within. Drury did a good job with their farm team. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sure, fine, that's fine. But I definitely also think that Chris Drury got his marching orders from ownership being make this team tougher. I don't want to see Tom Wilson ragdolling Panarin or any of our guys ever again. And yeah, okay. Now bringing in, now some of the acquisitions. I mean, Barclay Goudreau, I like that one. Okay, of course, but he's not like going to be tough guy going to beat guys up. But he's a damn good
Scrapper.
defensive forward.
He's hard to play against.
Absolutely, good size. Plays a solid two-way game. Much more so defensively, but still, very good in that regard. Sammy Blais, part of the, another guy from a Stanley Cup team, of course, the 2019 St. Louis Blues. A gritty guy. He's actually an alumni of the Charlottetown Islanders of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey Team, which is the local hockey team here in my beautiful hometown of Charlottetown. Okay. So, a little plug there.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
But he's a good, gritty guy, sandpaper guy, So, yeah, that good guy to have in there, of course. And then we get to Ryan Reeves. And this is where we see the overreaction really come to the fore. Ryan Reeves is, not going to be effective against Tom Wilson. He wasn't effective against the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm referring back to it again but there it is. You want to talk about exposing weaknesses? But the Montreal Canadiens exposed of certain teams in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. How about Ryan Reeves didn't do a damn thing because they just basically ignored him. They weren't going to get suckered into any little silly mind games or anything like that. And neither's Tom Wilson. Do you really think Tom Wilson's going to give two craps that, Ryan Reeves is here? Oh, whoop-de-doo. That was a waste of time, waste of money. What are you going to do with this guy? I know Ryan Reeves plays a certain role, but I don't think that's the right role for this New York Rangers team. This is a team that's still largely based on skill. If you're going to bring in toughness, why don't you try and find somebody who, if he's not a Tom Wilson clone, could be Tom Wilson light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know those guys can be hard to find too, but it's better than bringing in a guy who basically is, lack of a better word, a goon, Yeah. I mean, he's not a goon in the traditional sense because they don't exist anymore. Ryan Reeves can play, but let's be honest. His whole thing is cheap shots and, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's 7 minutes a night,
Bingo. Yeah, 7, maybe 10 if he can stay out of the box.
Right.
Which, that might be asking too much.
You were better off going down like a Wayne Simmons route.
Yeah.
With if you were the Rangers. I'm just saying that because he's the first one that pops in my head. But
if you could get a Wayne Simmons, if you could get a Wayne Simmons in his prime sort of player.
Yeah.
Not Wayne Simmons as he is now.
No. Yeah.
Bless him. But, he hasn't been the same since the hip surgery. So, but yeah, I just, again, I like the additions of Goudreau and Blais. Reeves, not going to move the dial at all in terms of we don't want to bring in toughness. Fortunately, they didn't go too far overboard, but still, you gave up Buchnevich.
That's some skill they lost there.
That's a big skill loss. And yeah, okay, fine. If you've got a lot of depth and youth on the right side, I can understand. I mean, if Kakko and if Kravtsov, if they're ready, to be on your first and second line on the right side, great. Okay. Haven't seen anything yet that indicates that, but okay, maybe this is the year it happens. But if it doesn't, if Kakko is still struggling a bit to find his way, Kravtsov isn't ready yet, then you gave away Buchnevich for nothing. And how does that actually make you better? Oh, we're tougher? So what? Are you putting points on the board? No? Well, Anyway.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, there's a lot to like. I mean, you got Adam Fox, who
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
won the Norris, and K. Andre Miller, who I wanted the Flyers to draft instead of Jay O'Brien, who is still kind of stuck in neutral, although he had a little bit of a rebound. But and they bring in Jared Tenorti. He's kind of like a number 6 defenseman who adds even more toughness. But yeah, I think they kind of are going to be treading water a little bit this year in some ways.
Yeah, I think if they're looking for that the toughness element, the element that's going to help them will be the grit that Blaze and Goudreau bring in.
Yeah,
because these guys, yeah, they're gritty, but they don't play stupid. They have an actual genuine role. So yeah, they played every game in their Stanley Cup runs for their respective teams, so that shows that they have some value. So that will help. But yeah, otherwise, I think they could regret trading away Buchnevich if Kakko isn't ready. Yeah,
it would be interesting to watch. But like I said, if some of these kids take a bigger bite of the apple, then we'll be eating our words because there's a lot of native talent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I would say the same thing about Kakko and Kravtsov as I would say about what I said about with Montreal with Cole Caulfield and Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. Exactly, the difference is the three Habs proved themselves in the heat of playoff battle. Okay,
right? They
really did prove themselves. These kids still haven't had that taste yet, so we don't know.
Right. So we move on out to the Island, and I think the Island definitely qualifies as the mystery team in the NHL. Lou has kept his cards close to the vest. We're not sure. I mean, look, he brings in Richard Panik and loses Jordan Eberle to Seattle and Nick Leddy. But there's all kinds of rumors that he could be in play for this guy, and he's going to sign Zach Parise at the right time. But he's just timing it. And he's got almost $12 million in cap space. We're not sure. So it's like we don't know what Islander team we have.
Yeah. If the New York Islanders were a Sarah McLachlan song, it would be Building a Mystery.
That's it.
Because, yeah. But that's Lou Lamoriello for you. Excuse me. I mean, he took this tactic last year where he waited until like right before the puck drop for the regular season before he announced that he had signed Andy Green and Matt Martin and Corey Schneider. And he's doing the same thing. Apparently, he's doing the same thing this year because the view is that Kyle Palmieri, Zach Parise, Casey Ciziska, and Travis Zajac, they're all still listed as unrestricted free agents, but there's an opinion that no, they're actually signed. And, Lou is just waiting for the right moment once he's done doing whatever other mysterious moves he's got up his sleeve before he announces those signings, which, to be fair, I mean, that would explain a lot because you would think guys like, Palmieri and Parise still on the market at this stage in the off season? Why? Why? Palmieri should have been, at the very least, should have been snapped up on day one and Parise within the first week, but they're not. So, okay, we go by that premise. But then he also has to re-sign Anthony Beauvillier and Ilya Sorokin,
right?
their goaltender of the future. So, okay. And he's been linked to Vladimir Tarasenko, and maybe he might also be in the market for a left side defenseman to replace Nick Leddy, who he had to trade to Detroit for cap reasons.
Right.
Man, oh man, oh man! Nobody does intrigue better than Lou Lamoriello. I'm telling you. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what those cards are when he finally sets them on the table.
And there are cup contenders still. You have to say that. Oh
God, yeah. Absolutely. In the Eastern Conference, for me, it's still Tampa Bay, Florida, the Hurricanes, and the Islanders. Without question. I mean, come on, 2 semifinals in a row, guys. Yeah, if they are, Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, good Lord, a bounce here, a goal there, and it might have been them facing the Canadians. I mean, they pushed the Lightning to the limit this time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting, because if he signed those 4 unrestricted free agents we just discussed, how much money do he have left for Beauvillier? Because he's not going to trade Sorokin. He can't.
No.
He can't. I mean, yeah, Varlamov is just there basically as a tutor, and he provide experience and leadership. Sorokin is the guy. So what happens to Beauvillier then? I mean, he's worth a decent raise here. Or is he going to get, or does he become a trade chip to bring in bigger fish like Tarasenko? Or do you go and find yourself a defenseman with him? Do you even bother doing any of that at all? God only knows with Lou Lamoriello.
Yeah.
As I said, man, building a mystery.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Definitely check SpectorsHockey.net for the latest on what the Islanders are doing, because we sure don't know. Now, just so the New Jersey Devils have had, in the opinion of some, the best offseason in terms of adding talent. Of course, they're really coming from far down. They lose Ryan Murray, Will Butcher, Nathan Bastian, and Aaron Dell. Bring in Dougie Hamilton, Jonathan Bernier. Well, that's an upgrade. And Ryan Graves, who they were able to pick off really good second pair defensemen from Colorado. Bernier is a guy I wanted for the Flyers, but they just didn't have the money. So, and now there's a rumor that the Devils could be in the market for some other players. What's your take on what the Devils are doing?
Well, they're definitely building to improve to be a playoff team this year. Just come on, when you go out and lay out top dollar for Dougie Hamilton, when you're able to pick off a defenseman of the caliber, a shutdown defenseman of the caliber of Ryan Graves, from a team, that like the Avalanche, who had no choice but to trade him because they were going to lose him for nothing in the expansion draft. Yeah. When you could go out and you can entice a free agent like Jonathan Bernier, who could have signed anywhere. There were several teams who wanted to sign Jonathan Bernier, including the Red Wings. The Red Wings wanted to bring him back. But the Devils were able to convince him. And then, of course, you look at their signing of, they signed Thomas Tatar as well a couple of weeks ago. And, there's speculation, as I mentioned earlier, that, maybe they might be able to get themselves a guy like Tarasenko, because they've got the cap space, obviously. They've got over 12 million cap space. They got 22 or 23 players, for their roster next season signed. They are in perfect condition here right now if they want to go and make a trade for a guy like him. They do have assets that they could move. The question is, will they? I don't know if it would be Tarasenko, but I really think that General Manager Tom Fitzgerald, I really do think that he wants to bring in just one more forward, another winger, a top 6 guy, maybe if you can get him. I definitely think that he's not done. So, maybe it's a big name guy like Tarasenko. Maybe it's kind of a lesser fish out there, who can say. But, they're building to be a Stanley Cup, or not a Stanley Cup contender. Sorry, getting ahead of myself with them right now. Maybe in a couple more years when with Heeshire and young Jack Hughes, if they improve, as we know they're capable of doing. But I mean, the defense is better, much better. The goaltending is now better because you've got a steady, reliable guy in there like Bernier who can help Mackenzie Blackwood. Bernier's basically filling the role that they'd hoped Corey Crawford was going to fill for him last year. Yeah. And they do have some young guys there. Yanni Kuokkanen, yeah. Igor Sharangovich. Oh my God,
Sharangovich. Igor Sharangovich.
Thank you. 9 times out of 10, I say that name right. It's late in the evening, my time here. I apologize. But they do have those 2 kids, and there's potential there, and the whole thing with their offense last year, what was the drumbeat constant over and over? They need to get some scoring wingers for Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. They need to get them scoring wingers. Well, they've got Tatar. They've got those two guys in their system who are getting, or on the roster, the young guys who are getting better. That's why, though, I think they might go out and get maybe one more an established guy, because if they can do that, then I think they've got a very good chance of making the playoffs this year.
Now, here's a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you think Subban bounces back with Hamilton and the other backup he has back there?
He could. I wouldn't rule it out. Subban, though, actually, he kind of reinvented himself last season more as a defensive blue liner, because we've been so used to the Subban of the past, the puck moving guy with a flash and dash who occasionally throws a big hit that everybody oohs and ahs over, But he really did kind of change his game last season, and he actually he had a better season this past season with the Devils than he did the previous year. So having Hamilton there and Ryan Graves as well, and let's not forget, and I'm sitting here and I'm forgetting Ty Smith as well, the young blue liner back there. Oh my God, we can't forget. Yeah, can't overlook him as well. So that blue line is going to is deeper. And if Subban kind of no longer feels that he has to carry the whole load, because let's be honest, he did have to do that in his first year there. So he was kind of trying to do everything for everybody. And I don't think, and that's definitely not where he's comfortable. So maybe we see a bounce back from him where he kind of maybe gets back to being more of that puck moving guy, but now with a better defensive sense. And if that happens, they'll be in, their blue line alone would be in terrific shape.
And you got to figure he's going to get easier minutes. I mean, because
yes, oh, absolutely.
It's deployment at this point of his career, So
absolutely, because Ty Smith is going to get more playing time. That's obvious. Dougie Hamilton's going to be logging a lot of time. Ryan Graves can get you over 20 minutes a game, as I said. Shut down. Just a solid shutdown guy from my old hometown of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. I might add another plug right there. There you go.
Oh.
Yes, my mom knows his mom, so there you go.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. Yeah, when you're from small towns, hey, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah,
but honestly, I think that looking at that D, I think that's going to be really key for them as well, and having that improvement there, and that production with Dougie Hamilton as well, bringing some offense for you, and Subban as well, if he decides to kind of go back a little more towards that offensive style. Yeah, they could be. As I said, they could be in good shape to contend for a playoff spot.
Very, very interesting how they have sneakily gotten better. If you can sneak around with Hischier and Jack Hughes, but it's just that so much was put on them, and it wasn't going to work. That a lot of people kind of turned their attention and said, look, I'll look at them in 2 or 3 years. And now you're back to looking at them. And I still think that Blackwood's a good goaltender. And Bernier's kind of like a bridge. So when there's some rough spots, he's very qualified to handle that and take some, a block of games. And, we're going to get to the last team on our list that maybe not be in as good a situation. But do you think the Devils would be interested in a former local native by the name of James Van Riemsdyk?
Ooh. Well, I don't know if they would go that far, but then again, if they would be looking at somebody like a Tarasenko, and I got to say right off the top here, I don't know if they're actually looking at Tarasenko. This has just been some, media speculation as well that I've been reporting on. But if they actually were, then why wouldn't you be looking at somebody like a Van Riemsdyk if he were available? But I think they'd be maybe looking for, let me just pull up their depth chart here for a second real quick. I think maybe they might be looking more on the right side than on the left.
Gotcha.
I think maybe they might be looking for that. But, hey, never say never. I wouldn't rule anything out. But
because the Flyers with a recent signing have come up against a cap crunch, and we're going to get to that. Right now, as it stands, they have $280,000 in cap space, and that's carrying 22 guys. So, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, the hometown here anyway. for the O&B Puckcast. And listen, it was a productive offseason, and we referred to some of the moves. Let's kind of recap. So they trade Jake Voracek for Cam Atkinson. Prior to that, they traded Ryan Ellis for Nolan Patrick and Phil Myers. And, of course, Patrick got flipped to Vegas. They picked up Keith Yandel as a free agent. And Martin Jones, we'll talk about that, as a free agent. Then they moved on from Shane Gostisbehere, strictly a cap deal. They moved on from Robert Haig as part of the other deal that we're going to discuss with Rasmus Ristolainen, a first-round draft pick, and a second, and Robert Haig go to Buffalo for a player that the Flyers amateur and pro scouts have loved for a long time. A guy who doesn't really drive play, but he's also has some intangibles that the Flyers have lacked. And a lot of this offseason smacks of that particular quality. The Flyers on the ice last year, in the words of general manager Chuck Fletcher, were in a malaise. They were lifeless. They were basically schneidered in several games, really wiped out by the Rangers 9-0, 8-3. We talked ad nauseum about it, and they wanted a new way. And like Elliot Friedman referred to before it ever happened, the Flyers were up for some major surgery this year, and Chuck Fletcher did just that. Lyle, your thoughts?
Well, I think that when I wrote about this at Bleacher Report, I listed the Flyers as being among, the teams that dramatically improved in the offseason. And I stand by that. First of all, right off the bat, bringing in Ryan Ellis fills that obvious need on your, the right side of your first pairing defense. That need that, that had been that big void that had been there since Niskanen retired. It had to be done. It was, as I said, it just brings so much more to their D now, and gives Provorov, I think, just an outstanding defense partner. So, I think right there that's going to be a significant improvement. Ristolainen gets, oh boy, yeah, the analytics crowd just love to dump on him. But this is a guy who was a product of a really crappy team for a long time. And, I'm really keen to see how he's going to do on a better club. And especially where he's not going to have to be relied upon to carry the load so often, night after night after night. He says he's going to come in and, he's got a chip on his shoulder too. He's coming in with something to prove here as well. I think he's looking for an opportunity here to kind of, say in your face to all his doubters. It'll be interesting to see how he does, on a, I think a deeper club with better coaching. If Alain Vigneault and his coaching staff can bring out the best in Ristolainen, oh, you guys are going to love this, because, yeah, he can bring so many different things to your blue line. And because you look at his stats during his time in Buffalo, he was always their leader in block shots, always their leader in hits, He always plays a physical style. And, yeah, with that chip on his shoulder coming into this, I think that could be definitely work to their benefit if Vigneault and his staff can really harness, that energy. Keith Yandel, he's going to help. He'll help you on your power play, definitely, He's got the puck moving ability. And hey, maybe keep that Iron Man streak alive.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's up to him. But there's another guy, though, I think that's coming in here to this season with something to prove. And the same, I think, also can be said to a lesser degree for Martin Jones. But let's be honest, he's not coming in to take the starting job away from Carter Hart. I think at this stage in his career, this is the thing that he needs, is to come in and kind of now back up and maybe mentor a younger goaltender, And Jones, let's not forget, he has a lot of playoff experience, and that's going to prove invaluable, Either if you need to draw on him in postseason play, I'd have a guy who's been there before, or to basically kind of help a kid like Carter Hart kind of work through the nerves or whatever. But yeah, overall, and then you swap out Voracek for Cam Atkinson. Okay, Atkinson isn't the playmaker that Jake is, but he's a goal scorer. He's going to help increase your goal production. So
and they need that. They have so many reluctant shooters in their lineup.
Oh, absolutely. And Cam Atkinson is not afraid to shoot the puck.
No.
And yeah, again, another guy coming in. And honestly, though, I think that Atkinson was ready for a change too. He'd been with Columbus a long time, and yeah, he put it to you this way: he didn't seem disappointed to be traded to Philadelphia.
No, and Jake actually, as we found out later, wanted to be traded out of the Philadelphia, and it was time. I think it's a trade that's probably going to help both teams. The Flyers need the cap relief on an AAV basis. Meanwhile, Columbus is probably going to be below the cap for a while and could afford a higher AAV for a shorter term.
Yeah. Well, here's a quick. I want to go back to Martin Jones and especially with Carter Hart too. I think just because I followed Jones before, and they're every year they seem like they were losing somebody stable on that defense. Braun, Dylan, all of them that course, and their defense was pretty horrible the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not taking it away, but we saw what happened here with Carter Hart when he was left hung out to dry. He was overcompensating, especially against Boston. A couple games there, one game he got beat to the far side, and then he started cheating, and he got beat to the short side. With this somewhat stable D, I think that both of them, Hart and Jones, could really recover and have a little confidence boost. Plus the fact that I think that with the acquisition and the different culture that they're playing on with the forwards, that they could be playing and giving up less shots, and less shots equal more opportunities to get scored upon it. And perhaps we, as Philly fans, maybe you could tell us from an outsider's look, we're not going to be looking at these games where it's like 9-1 or 9-0. I mean, they're just heartening, and it plays hell with your goaltender's confidence.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And look, the D is going to be better. I will be stunned if they're as bad as they were last season. It's going to be, but Ryan Ellis alone is going to make your defense better. But, Ristolainen, I think, again, a guy coming in with something to prove. Keith Yandel, another guy coming in with something to prove. I think they're going to help out quite a bit. And again, we have to remember Ryan Ellis. He played in the Stanley Cup. He played in the Stanley Cup Finals. He's on a team that went to Stanley Cup Finals. Martin Jones played on a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals. That's the kind of good attitude to bring. Guys with that kind of experience, who's going to have that kind of leadership as well, to have in your room. And I think we can be fair in saying that Martin Jones has to be a better backup than Brian Elliott at this point. I mean, Brian Elliott, God bless him, he went above and beyond more times than not. But at this stage in his career, he's not ready to kind of take on the kind of the workload that he was having to when Carter Hart was struggling. So Martin Jones can do that. He's not going to be your starter. That's not the role he's being brought in to do, and I think he understands that. He knows that. And that's going to take some pressure off of him. But as you said, with an improved defense, they're not going to be facing, so many shots, and especially, having so many, golden scoring opportunities that they're going to have to face. Those are going to be taken away. So it's going to be easier for their workload. It's going to be easier as well. It's just going to be easier for them as a goaltender, knowing that, hey, if I kick out this shot, I'm not going to have to worry about the rebound being buried behind me because my D's not playing properly. Yeah.
And there is a reuniting of Martin Jones with Kim Dillabaugh, his original goalie coach in L.A.
Yeah.
And they're hoping that if he can kind of become like the next Cam Talbot, like he was with Henry, and he was able to. Cam Talbot really has found his groove in Minnesota. It took a while, but it's the type of thing. Whenever he couldn't make it, and then he went back into that role, he really excelled. So that's kind of what I'm hoping. I think the Flyers, by going for Ristolainen put themselves in a spot where they weren't able to spend more on the backup goaltender they needed, and also couldn't really address that hole at center that I think they have. And I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to play devil's advocate for one last thing before you go, Lyle. If you're looking at the Flyers, and this is from my standpoint, they had the opportunity, and apparently, and Chef, you can back me up on this, could have had a first-round draft pick instead of signing Scott Lawton. But they signed Lawton for $3 million AAV for 5 years. They just figured he's a Swiss Army knife. He can play all over the place. But to me, he's not good enough to hold down the third-line center position, and that position has been a weakness for so long. They were waiting for Nolan Patrick to grab it, and he just never could. So if you trade Lawton and you get a first-round draft pick, maybe the Flyers are the ones that end up with Sam Reinhart because they had a higher pick than Florida. And maybe they go a little bit lower in their estimation of what is needed for a D4, and they have more money to get a better goaltender. And in case Sean Couturier, who's pending to be a UFA next year, has another down year because you had a bit of one last year, or they wanted somebody signed to give them a little more leverage in those negotiations, they had a guy like Reinhart. And to me, I thought that was, if there's look, I'm happy I give Chuck Fletcher a solid B for what he did, especially for the intangibles. But if there's anything that's going to kick them in the butt a little bit, it's going into this offseason with Sean Couturier needing a contract. He's been underpaid for so long. He's probably going to get like between $8.5 and $9 million. And he's going to be entering his 30-year-old season. So they kind of paying him now for what he did in the past. Meanwhile, if you get a guy like Reinhart out there, gives you more flexibility to go forward the way you want. That would be my alternative scenario.
Yeah, but that's presuming, of course, that you have an opportunity to get in there to get Reinhart in the first place. I mean,
whoever had the highest first pick, that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, but I don't know. You can't, it's so easy to sit outside and kind of, and I mean, listen, I get what you're saying, but it's so easy to sit outside and kind of spitball that around. But we when we're not there to actually hear the discussions and find out what was actually being talked about and that sort of thing, or just to be in the moment, because I mean Fletcher was so busy. I mean, he had 4 crazy days. Let's be honest.
You're right. Yeah,
man, he was busy. So sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. Maybe they're confident enough with as I said, with the Couturier that they feel he'll still be able to be like maybe kind of like be a Patrice Bergeron and continue grinding on, you know what I mean, at a high level. Maybe they're confident in that, or maybe something better comes down the pipe.
Yep.
Maybe something better than Reinhart comes along. If not during this offseason, maybe at the trade deadline, maybe next offseason. So, yeah. Yeah,
no, that's a very fair point. And of course, they're still waiting for the emergence of Morgan Frost. So it's not like there's no options. He's played only a period and a half in 19 months. So he's going to have to reestablish himself. But so what do you think overall? Do you think that this is a lead pipe cinch to be a playoff team, or you got to wait and see what it looks like out on the ice?
Well, I mean,
tough division.
Well, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely a tough division. And honestly, I think that they can be a bounce back team. I really do. I was shocked by how they played last season. But a lot of that too, some of that you can chalk up to COVID. Some of it you can chalk up to Couturier. We had the rib injury and he was out for a couple of weeks early in the season. That didn't help matters any. Yeah. Carter Hart, that totally unexpected, kind of meltdown that he had. But I think this is a team that has the talent, that has the capability, and especially the moves they made. And again, just bringing in Ryan Ellis alone, that's going to improve your team. That improves your D. Bringing in Ristolainen and Yandel definitely should help as well. Martin Jones should help as I said before, give Carter Hart, maybe a little bit of a better backup, a little bit maybe perhaps a better mentor. And yeah, I just think that they were just too talented to be as lousy as they were last year, to be quite honest. I mean, I know the Niskanen absence really hurt. It hurt a lot more, I think, than everybody expected that it would. But again, this is a team, like, even with swapping out Voracek for Cam Atkinson, this is a team that has the talent to be better than they were last season. And so I can see them being in the playoff picture, sure, absolutely.
Well, there you are. And Chef, do you have any final questions for Lyle?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything thoroughly. I think what are we down to, like 54 days now or something, or hockey? And I'm excited for it. I mean, it's been a while since I've been this excited for the Flyers to start back up again. And I think, overall though, but I have them a little bit higher up in ranking of how well they did in the offseason, maybe one or two slots higher than, but nothing outrageous. I think it's going to be fun.
All righty. So, Lyle, this has been a marathon session. We want to thank you so much. People have to head over to spectorshockey.net and also check out your work at The Guardian and Prince Edward Island. That's what PEI stands for, I imagine.
Yep.
Hockey News and Bleacher Report. And what else can you tell the folks?
Well, I mean, you pretty much rattle off all the places where everybody can find me, but listen, guys, this was great. I know it was a long haul, but I really enjoyed this, and let's hope we can get together again sometime during the season when things kick off or soon afterwards, and maybe we can see how well our prognostications panned out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow, this is really terrific. Thanks so much.
It was my pleasure, guys. Take care.
You take
Thanks,
care.
Man.
Okay, so Chef, we're going to do a quick wrap on this. There are some things we do have to cover, but before I get started with that, just a reminder that the O&B Puckcast and Flyers Nitty Gritty is brought to you by Jim South Street, 400 South Street, 40 years of the finest cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries that you can find in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. With or without, it doesn't matter. Just head down to 400 South Street. And if you can't make it down there, but you live nearby, they use DoorDash. So just check out Jim South Street, 400 South Street, best cheesesteaks. You got to check it out. All right. So, Chef, before we roll, the Flyers signed Bunnaman, interesting 2-year contract. The first year is two-way. So he can go down, and not be faced with waivers, right? The second year is one way, where he would be subject to waivers. It's basically, do your business and get off the pot in year 2, right? Establish yourself as an NHL player, or that's it.
Or that's it, yeah.
That's right. So Travis Sanheim gets a 2-year contract. The AAV is $4.675. That's about, I don't know, $675,000 more of an AAV than I thought. And it looks like the Flyers are going to have to go with 22 unless they make a deal. Hence why I brought up the idea the Flyers might move on from a winger. Maybe if they move one of their wingers, I thought, look, JVR is valuable, okay? And you don't want to count too much on a guy like Wade Allison who gets hurt a lot. Yeah. But they do have an excess. Because even if you drop a guy like O&B, that's only just over $1 million.
It's only $1 million.
But if they could trade, a team needs a scoring winger, and they could fill a little bit better job at filling that third line center hole. I'm really concerned about that. That's a real bugaboo. And plus, even if it costs them like $5 million, they could get like $2 million in cap space. I don't know who's out there, but look for that because I don't know if he's done dealing. What do you think?
I don't know if he's done dealing either. I'm definitely think that they're not happy to wait with Nick Backstrom played last season. I don't think they're very happy at all. I think even if they move that, I wouldn't be surprised if they move 2 or 3 players just to secure that 3C spot that you're referring to and possibly get a more manageable salary scoring winger.
Yeah, again, you look up and down the left wing. You got Giroux, Farabee, Van Riemsdyk, and Oscar Lindblom just on the left side alone. Then you have Konechny, Atkinson, Wade Allison. Okay, that's a bit of a gamble. But Nick Backstrom on the right wing. But listen, I mean, Leszczynski can play the right wing. That's no issue. And Nate Thompson can be your fourth line center, or he could be your 13th forward. It doesn't matter. I mean, I just as soon have Scott Lawton at fourth line center. That's fine with me. Or you could play in the wing, and both Farabee and Lindblom are capable of playing on their off wing as well. So I'm just saying, if you want to clean it up, I mean, it's possible Fletcher could go into the season, go with 22, and see what goes. There could be some injuries in training camp, so it could be one of those situations. So before we go, just a hat tip to Henrik Lundqvist, who finally made it official and retired. It was a great career. It was frustrating to play against him, but hey, a hat tip again. Made it to a final, and certainly was the reason they made it that far. And so they're gonna miss seeing the guy, but he'll be around. Look, he had a heart problem, and it's probably not worth the grind of playing to take a chance after he probably had a procedure or something, So
I mean, great player to watch too.
Yeah. So a Flyers development camp starts in 6 days. So that runs from the 28th through September 1st. And like you said, it's only 50-some days before they start dropping the puck for good. But the last thing before we go, it's a little bit of a somber note. Jay Greenberg left us this past week. He was 71. He was on the Flyers beat from the 75-76 season for several years, and then he spent 14 years at the Daily News. He was a preeminent Flyers historian, and he replaced Jack Chevalier. So Jack Chevalier goes out with 2 cups, and then Jay Greenberg comes in, and they make the finals and probably had the best offensive team that they had in team history, really, in 1976. And Jay Greenberg had really great books that you have to get, particularly Full Spectrum and the Philadelphia Flyers at 50. You should check it out. But just an homage to Jay Greenberg. And it looks like Bill Meltzer is going to kind of step into that role, and hopefully he can write his own book in his own chapter. And I know that Jay and Bill were really close, and everybody seemed to know Jay had nothing but the best things to say about him, and how he was a mentor to a lot of people, even from a young age. He was just a great guy. May he rest in peace, and we send condolences to his family. Okay, so Chef, with that, we got another show coming up sometime next week. It's still to be determined. I hope people have enjoyed this. You can follow the O&B Puckcast on Twitter at O&B Puck. O&B Puck. We have 12 or so podcast formats. So, Chef, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter, Chef to the Left B. Just look for that, and or look for us at O&B, and I'll probably be commenting on something there.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, you can find me, Isaiah, at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Isaiah, don't forget the _520. I talk about a lot of different things. Some people like it, some people don't. That's okay. It's just an opinion. I try to be fact-based. I have a background professionally in certain industries, so I try to share what I've learned. But anyway, until next time, everybody, we've really had a great show. We hope you enjoyed it. We had a hell of a lot of fun. Everybody, take care.